The Redditor that vanished? Okay, wait, that sounds great.
The variety of daily users from all walks of life congregating on one single public forum has created a sense of community that's nearly unmatched in the current online landscape. Because of this, the website's given us the ability to look into our fellow Redditors' post histories, giving us a small peek into the lives they live. Oftentimes, these are mostly mundane. However, if you do a bit of digging, you'll find some that stand anomalous, abandoned, and forever embedded within the corner they carved online.
That's deep.
In 2017, a user named Flip made a post explaining that they're eager to try out a drug by the name of Datura. While the initial response was greatly against it, Flip ignored
I have no idea what that is. What the fuck is that?
Creating disturbing update comments and leaving behind baffled onlookers that feared the worst had happened to them. This is the story of Flip.
If it's bath salts, then he probably just went to Florida. He probably took that shit and then immediately went to Florida to get more. I solved the case right away.
On the night of April 17th of 2017, Flip would jump in with a simple question. Finally got my hands on some Datura. How much should I take? Their post reads the following. Hi guys. I finally got some Datura to try out. I'm free tomorrow and have the house to myself, so I'm really excited to try the effects.
So it's not bath salts?
Plant. I have around 60 seeds, some dried flowers, and leaves. How much should I take for a nice first-time trip? I was thinking of crushing up X seeds and making tea with them. Drink the tea and smoke a couple of leaves while the tea is starting to
Damn, this guy's got it figured out. What the fuck is this?
Seeds be enough?
Very classy.
Sources on the internet tell me a regular dose is around 10 to 20, but I've seen some talk about over 30 seeds. Thanks, guys.
It's close to acid. Okay.
It could have
not close to acid at all. Okay. Before I continue, how about I just look it up? So that way I can be caught up on what the fuck this is. Chat has no idea, so I'm just gonna look it up. Because I've actually never heard of that, which is surprising because I know of like every big drug. This must not be a very popular one. It's a poisonous plant, also known as devil's trumpets. Devil's trumpets. Okay. That's pretty fucking wacky sounding. Yeah, it looks like it's a psychedelic.
Cause death. A user named Rect recalled their prior experience with Datura, claiming that they're still scarred from it, in hopes of deterring the OP from giving it a try. I bought 2 Datura Inoxia plants from a local greenhouse.
Cambam, GMB, and Krusty.
Over the course of about 2 weeks. I never noticed too many effects initially. Dry eyes and mouth, hot flush skin, rapid heartbeat. But I was 100% in a state of psychosis that whole time and for about 2 weeks after I stopped using it. Like someone here said, it's a deliriant, so I wasn't even aware of how totally fucked I was.
Wow.
My friends got increasingly worried about me, and I finally broke down mentally. About a month later, I got diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder and severe panic disorder with derealization and depersonalization.
Why is he still in the drugs subreddit then?
While the effects felt by Rect were severe,
he had this fucking awful experience and he's still in the same subreddit.
According to a Logarithm the Great, they claim that the potency of the drug can vary from person to person, and even sometimes through the time of day it's taken.
Just to give advice? I guess, maybe.
After reading this, I went forth and cross-checked their claim with a psychedelic education resource named thethirdwave.co, and found that while the time of day assertion isn't substantiated, Datura's so-called fatal dose ranges pretty widely. According to this guide,
he's a tier 1 frazzled and resubs collect.
100 milligrams of dry seeds have been known to kill, while others have taken substantially more than that and lived. Considering how heavily any drug's effects can vary from person to person, this declaration isn't that surprising. However, it is noteworthy.
Sorry to hear that, Soul Leader.
So,
oh, maybe here
should Flip take?
These are the bits Mike and Crab.
Exactly 0. None. I hope this is a shitpost. Good luck and report back, please. Best effects will be achieved by doing none of it, I believe. Throw that fucking hell in the garbage.
Wow, this is actually a pretty supportive subreddit.
Unanimous. Let's see how they took it.
Huh, not bad.
Update.
We did it, Reddit.
I've crushed some seeds, around 15 to 16, in my mortar and put them in a glass of water. I've added some lemon juice and sugar to mask the taste. I'll just have to roll my joint with the datura leaves and I'll be set to go. I've decided I'll be sipping on the tea and slowly smoking the leaves until I feel the effect is strong enough. After this, commenters were questioning why they'd subject themselves to such a dangerous substance. They were wished good luck and were given advice for the phenomenon that they were about to experience. For Flip and Flop, it was the point of no return. The train left the station, and they were on a one-way track to the inevitable consequences.
They, turns out, transcended, became this ascendant being. He can now shoot lightning bolts from his dick or something. He is Datura now.
That commenters were tuned in.
Thanks for the gifts of Mike.
Everyone knew what was about to happen. However, hope for the best remained abundant. Remind me posts, well wishes, and questions on an update flooded the space. And, at least in that moment,
thanks for the gifts of Bailey.
All eyes were on the OP. 5:55 in the morning.
Never even heard of that, Sentient.
April 18th of 2017.
Thanks for Prime Max. I gave you the 10 though, Sentient.
How normal again stopped now.
Oh, is it definitely like a shit post?
Needless to say, everyone's concerns were validated. However, it was good to know that the OP was still alive.
Nah, no, this is all a
The
stunt.
replies here were mostly well wishes, with a clear mood of apprehension. A user named Emilsko pled for the OP to reply to the thread when things became normal again, and another named Pest P gave their 2 cents on the matter as well. There unfortunately aren't any guarantees.
This feels very fake now. I'll let it ride though.
Evening, nearly exactly 12 hours later.
He made a video game? Holy shit. He smoked so much
What you're looking at
datura
is
that he
a
made a
GIF
game?
posted by a Redditor named Nitris in the gaming subreddit. It's allegedly depicting mammoths in an accurate battle simulator. Yeah, they nailed that one.
Well, I mean that's
So why are we here?
that's the joke.
Well,
Okay.
because someone we know very well by this point made their way to this space
Exhibits
specifically.
cuddle.
Please, these big
Jesus,
dogs are
Soul
fighting.
Eater.
Not okay.
Holy shit.
It appears to me that Flip and Flop's trying to claim that, please, these big dogs are fighting, not okay. With the big dogs, of course, being their interpretation of the mammoths in that GIF. If I'm
It's
being
awful,
honest,
Soul Eater.
it's safe to say that Flip and Flop's
Doing
discovery
alright,
of
Solaris.
this post likely didn't do them any favors. Depictions of an animal quite literally launching another one in the air while under the influence of something as unpredictable as Datura would probably mess me up pretty badly.
I don't really believe any of this anymore. This just seems like a Redditor doing a
Flip and Flop
stunt.
would never return. Their thread continued to rack up comments pleading for any sort of update. However, through all of this, fear remained abundant that the worst had happened.
How does this go on for so much longer? How do you get like a conclusive answer to this?
Sadly, most of the search results surrounding the username Flip and Flop aren't useful. I was hoping to dig up accounts that they might have
Thanks to the big
migrated to
tier
on other
2.
websites, but I
Malarian
frustratingly didn't
dictator?
obtain much.
Thanks to the big tier 2.
Scouring the surface web is an uphill battle. We can find a considerable amount of posts asking about him. However, concrete answers to that are non-existent. There was a Flip and Flop with 1P account I found that could have been a potential lead. However, considering that the last post they made was 8 years ago on the NoFap forum, it's needless
That
to
could be
say
him.
that I was only left with dead ends.
Well, I don't know about that.
Speaking of dead ends, the following is a list of accounts and their current status I found on other websites with the name Flip and Flop. Imager, dead. Facebook, dead.
Oh, I can feel
Stumble
a shit
Upon,
coming on.
Dead. Photobucket, dead. Reddit, dead.
He threw some pyro.
Clothesmaster, doesn't work. Taringa.net, dead. Babyblog.ru,
What?
this is getting weird, but dead. I'm sure you get the picture by this point. The name is surprisingly common, and the results increase tenfold once you factor in the other spelling of Flip and Flop. Brute forcing our way into tracking this person down is only going to result in wasted time and a massive headache.
Maybe
So
really.
I'm going
Thanks
to
for the
pause
five.
my search here and pivot my focus towards the actual drug he took because my curiosity's peaked.
Does
What even is
he
Datura?
take it?
How serious really is it? And is it actually as fatal as it's made out to be? To answer this, I made my way to a non-profit educational resource by the name of arrowit.org that specializes in providing information about various psychoactive plants and chemicals. In their entry about Datura, they claim that it's a woody-stalked, leafy herb growing up to 2 meters.
It doesn't look
Produces
like a
spiny
scary
seed
plant.
pods and large white or purple trumpet-shaped flowers that face upward. Most parts of the plant contain atropine, scopolamine, and hyoscyamine. It has a long history of use in both South America and Europe, and is known for causing delirious states and poisonings in uninformed users. This definition got me curious on the effects of atropine, scopolamine, and hyoscyamine, and so I dug a bit further. According to Arrowhead, these are known as tropane alkaloids.
So is this whole video about a guy that likely
including
overdosed?
disorientation, confusion,
Or is there like... I'll just let it
hallucinations,
ride.
delusions, panic, and more. Furthermore, the resource states that in this class of hallucinogens, namely,
I think it's still
are,
very
quote,
likely fake to
absolutely
begin with, but yeah.
convinced that the hallucinations and delusions are, in every sense, real and may attempt to interact with them. This can range from amusing to dangerous. This almost leaves me to wonder what kind of experience Flip and Flop had.
This is a
since
gift
they can
sub Soul
vary
Eater.
pretty widely.
Looks the bits
As
num
we know
num.
by this point, an update from their aftermath is non-existent, and at this time, we have yet to gather a detailed, first-hand account about a Datura trip. So what is it really like? A user on a website named steamit.com shared their story about 3 years ago. In their post, they claimed that they had taken about 8 dried seeds and were eager to experience the effects. After doing so, however, they were immediately met with extreme thirst, causing their, quote, mouth to dry up in a horribly scary way. The dose in which you get active effects is extremely close to the amount needed for a fatal overdose. Following this, they share
Kinsama's in
detail
prison? God damn
what
it.
it was they went through. After about an hour, I felt a weird mix of euphoria and dysphoria. It had a bizarre sense of fun to it, as reality and imagination blended to form one. It gave me a very trippy feeling, which was at the time chilling and scary. After quite a long time, maybe 2 hours, I felt poisoned as I can't remember how I acted or how I perceived the world.
I'm not
exactly.
really into this one, man.
Felt
If
like
there's
I was
only
dying,
2
honestly.
posts to go off of,
I
there's
thought it
no
was quite a
conclusive
bit of
answer.
passed out. Everything felt surreal, and I definitely had some weird
It's more just like a
hallucinations,
warning
which
against
at
it.
the time felt realistic and normal. Then the creature became outrageous.
Is that how it ends?
It almost seemed like too perfect of a storm. Like the perfect storm, about the fatal dose being incredibly close to the one in which you feel the effects, combined with the possibility that Flip and Flop didn't have anyone with him
Thanks,
to make sure
Reset
he was
Dog.
okay. It all seemed like the perfect storm of what not to do when trying out a substance for the first time. As a matter of fact, in some ways, it almost seemed... Here, I'll give you a hint.
Yeah, let me hear the hint.
The profile was created on April 17th, the very same day that their one and only post was made. Being entrenched in the world of internet mysteries, observations like this stand out to me like a sore thumb. It appears to me that this account was made for the sole reason of discussing their story about trying Datura. While, sure, they potentially could be separating this from their personal accounts and life due to the taboo nature of something like this, it unfortunately discounts the validity of their entire account. Furthermore,
Oh,
the
he
fact
gets
that
the
they
same
used a
conclusion.
public profile for this post explains the lack of other social media or forum handles with the name Flip and Flop existing online. Without any sort of hint at their location, their main account, or their interests, tracking down the actual person and cross-checking a potential case record is impossible. Now, don't get me wrong here. While I'm entertaining the idea that this could be fabricated, the sequence of events that took place lend credence to this being real.
What?
If we look at the post, it was made at 5:21 p.m. Central on April 17th of 2017. Over the course of the next 26 minutes, Flip and Flop would go from asking about trying it to having it prepared. If we're considering the potential that their mind was made up on...
It's not a very interesting story, to be honest. It's a Redditor made one post, and then there's 2 posts to follow it up. I'm not real into that one. To me, that sounds more like a classic Reddit shitpost thing than like a genuine overdose. But even if it was, it's still a very unsatisfying story to follow, since you'll never know and there's no evidence to point to anything conclusive. Not really into that. Fuck it. XQC watched it, I'll watch it. I actually really like the DB Cooper story, and I haven't seen this one yet. Thanks to resub Rick, the Prime, Gregory, and Mustard.
A daring parachute escape from a flying
Mustard.
727 somewhere between wings.
A search was made of the plane immediately. We don't know who he was, where he came from, or where he went. I expect that we'll keep looking
Thanks, resub
until we
Arsenal.
find him or find out what happened.
I love the idea that a YouTuber, like, actually solves one of these things. I'm assuming he doesn't, right? But maybe he does, I don't know.
In the afternoon of November the 24th, 1971, a middle-aged man carrying a briefcase walked into Portland International Airport and purchased a one-way ticket to Seattle, Washington.
Different place, Hyper.
The man identified himself as Dan Cooper, and along with 36 other passengers and a crew of 6, he soon boarded Northwest Airlines Flight 305. Once aboard, Cooper made himself comfortable in the middle of the last row of seats on the right side of the cabin. He ordered a drink and had a smoke, because this was the 70s. Once the flight was cleared for departure, Cooper turned around and handed an envelope to flight attendant Florence Schaffner. Inside the envelope was a note featuring a handwritten message stating he had a bomb. Schaffner reluctantly sat down beside him and glimpsed what appeared to be
Christ,
8
this story's
sticks
so
of dynamite
fucking wild.
inside his briefcase. Cooper's demands were quite simple. He wanted $200,000
Thanks to the
in
resub,
cash
Joe.
and 4 parachutes.
Thank
He
you,
also
Bear.
demanded a fuel truck to stand ready to refuel the aircraft once they landed in Seattle. Should they fail to comply with his demands, he threatened to, quote, do the job. Once the flight was airborne, Schaffner went to inform the cockpit crew, while another
This was in
flight
like the
attendant by the name of
60s, so
Mucklow
200K
remained
back
by
then was
Cooper's
nuts.
side. By using a telephone in the rear of the cabin, Mucklow acted as an intermediary between Cooper and the rest of the flight crew.
They're
for the
70s,
remainder
whatever.
of the
Still a
hijack.
ton.
For the next hour and a half, Flight 305 maintained a holding pattern near Seattle, while local and federal authorities scrambled to procure the ransom as well as the 4 parachutes. 10,000 $20 bills were collected from a local bank, while the
Thanks for
owner of the
resub,
nearby
Meme Daddy.
skydiving school supplied the chutes. At
Yeah, I've seen
5:45
it, Parks
p.m.,
good.
more than 2 hours past its scheduled arrival, Flight 305 finally touched down in Seattle. By this point, it was well after sunset, and the aircraft was brought to a remote section of the tarmac. Once the flight came to a stop, both the ransom and the parachutes were handed over to Mucklow, who then brought them back aboard. In exchange,
How many people
Cooper
were on
permitted
board the
2 of
plane?
the flight attendants, as well as all the passengers, to disembark, many of whom had not yet realized the flight had been hijacked.
36?
With the
60?
ransom paid and only 4
36,
crew
okay.
members remaining on board, Cooper told Mucklow to inform the captain that he wanted to fly to Mexico City. They were to fly with the landing gear down, the flaps at 15 degrees and below 10,000 feet. The lights in the cabin were to be switched off, and the aft stairway, which opens from the underbelly of the fuselage, was to remain extended. 2 of Cooper's
Thanks,
demands
resub
could
nobly.
not be satisfied. First of all, the flight configuration he'd requested would not allow for a non-stop flight to Mexico City. As such, Cooper proposed a refueling stop in Phoenix, Yuma, or Sacramento before they all agreed on Reno, Nevada. Second of all, it was not possible.
It seems
to
like they're
depart
on
with the ventral
Cooper's
staircase
side, like, yeah, you can
extended.
take the money and
Cooper agreed
tell us
to
where to go.
retract the stairs on the condition that Mucklow remained by his side and taught him how to extend them once the plane was airborne. Parked for nearly 2 hours due to complications with refueling, Flight 305 was back in the air by 7:36 p.m. Less than 5 minutes after takeoff, Cooper told Mucklow to head for the cockpit and that from this point onwards, he was not to be disturbed. The last time she
The
saw
bomb
Cooper,
turned out to be
he was
fake, though.
standing
Oh,
in the
sorry,
middle
don't mean
of
to
the
spoil
aisle
things.
as if though he was preparing to jump. Mucklow joined the rest of the crew, locked the cockpit door behind her, and some 3 hours later, Flight 305 safely landed in Reno. Once the flight came to a stop, the crew carefully
I could be wrong, I
ventured
don't
into
really
the rear of
remember
the
that.
cabin, but there was no sign of Cooper nor the bomb. The aft stairway had been extended mid-flight and was slightly damaged upon landing. It seemed there was only one explanation for the hijacker's absence. At some point between Seattle and Reno, Cooper had strapped on a parachute, walked down the stairs, and leaped into the dark of night.
Thanks, Resub beat on. I'm not sure, Bear.
As soon as it became clear that Cooper was no longer on board, dozens of FBI agents converged upon the aircraft, only to discover a disappointing amount of physical evidence. A black clip-on tie, 8 cigarette butts, and 2 of the 4 parachutes were all that Cooper left behind. Evidently, he'd brought the ransom and briefcase along with him. In interviews conducted on the night of the hijacking, Cooper was described by the crew and passengers as a white male with brown eyes and dark hair. He appeared to be in his mid-40s and wore a dark trench coat, a dark suit, a white shirt, a black tie, and dark shoes. Soon after boarding, he'd also donned a pair of sunglasses. Based on this description, the FBI produced the first of several composite sketches. Before they could mount a search, however, the FBI had to figure out when Cooper abandoned ship. But that was easier said than done. None of the 4 crew members witnessed Cooper jumping from the plane, nor did the pilots of 2 fighter jets which escorted the flight between Seattle and Reno, which is not all too surprising given it was the middle of the night. Although the flight crew did report something odd, the last communication with the hijacker occurred at approximately 8:05 p.m. when the crew used the intercom to offer assistance, which Cooper declined. Within the next 10 minutes, the crew experienced what they described as an oscillation or vibration of the aircraft. At the time, the crew suspected it might have been produced by Cooper's jump, and a subsequent recreation of the hijacking supported that conclusion. Okay, so that took care of the when, but what about the where? While Cooper was very explicit about the flight's configuration and destination, he never specified any kind of route. In fact, Cooper grew so impatient with a slow refueling in Seattle that he dismissed the captain's request to file a flight plan and simply told him to, quote, get the show on the road. As such, the captain chose to fly along an airway known as Victor 23 without any input from Cooper. By using Victor 23 as a guide, authorities estimated the most probable location of the flight at the approximated time of the jump was about 40 kilometers north of Portland. And so, at the break of dawn, the FBI mounted an impressive search operation using helicopters, airplanes, and ground troops. The problem was, even if the estimated bailout point was accurate, Cooper's eventual landing or drop zone was far more difficult to pinpoint. The
Fuck, it's so cool! This guy's like an actual galaxy brain anime villain.
By a dense forest, so it was truly like finding a needle in a haystack. Apart from the difficult terrain, the search was further complicated by low temperatures and inclement weather, which persisted for days. Despite their best efforts, authorities never managed to find a single trace of Cooper, nor the items he brought along with him. Having made little to no progress by early December, the FBI turned their attention to the $200,000 ransom. The money had been collected from the Seattle First National Bank, which contained a ransom package of $200,000 just for such an occasion. Because of this, the serial numbers of the $10,020 banknotes given to Cooper had been documented in advance, a complete list of which were quickly made available to financial institutions, government agencies, and the general public. The intention was to make it as difficult as possible for Cooper to spend his money. Northwest Airlines and several newspapers even began to offer rewards to anyone who could find a note with a matching serial number. In spite of these efforts, no one ever did. That is until nearly a decade later. In early 1980, a young boy named Brian Ingram was building a campfire on a small beach in southern Washington. As he was digging into the sand, Ingram discovered 3 bundles of cash totaling $5,880. Having heard about the infamous skyjacking, Ingram's parents brought the severely degraded bundles to the FBI. The notes were promptly inspected, and sure enough, the serial numbers matched those of the ransom.
Fuck, big fine Brian. Imagine being like an 8-year-old, fucking drinking milk, shitting in your diapers, and finding that.
Than it answered. The most significant of which was how? How did the money end up so far away from the drop zone? Looking at this map, it might be tempting to think that Cooper simply dropped some of the money, which then fell into the Lewis River. The bundles could then have been carried further downstream by the Columbia
Thanks to
River
Resub Crones and the good stuff,
being
PG.
washed ashore at Tina Bar, which is the name of the beach. Tina Mucklow, Tina Bar. Coincidence? Yeah, coincidence. Anyway, the problem with this idea is that the Columbia River flows in the opposite direction. This has led some, including members of the FBI, to re-evaluate the initial drop zone assessment. For instance, if the drop zone was much further southeast, close to a river called the Washougal River, it is conceivable, albeit improbable, that the money floated all the way down to Tina Bar. Alternatively, the bundles may have simply landed on the beach if the flight path was further to the west. Even so, natural explanations struggle to explain how 3 independent, potentially free-falling and/or free-floating bundles of cash ended up at the exact same place on the same beach. To complicate matters, sediment from the riverbed was excavated and dumped onto Tina Bar as part of a dredging operation in 1974. And according to one analysis, the money was discovered above this layer of sediment. If true, that would mean the money came to rest at Tina Bar sometime after 1974.
What the
But
fuck?
a re-examination of that analysis found that what was believed to be a layer of deposited sediment might actually have been a perfectly natural layer of clay. Not only that, but the sediment was clearly dumped some distance away from where the money was discovered. Furthermore, when Ingram discovered the bundles, the rubber bands which held them together were still intact. This is significant because experiments conducted in 2009 revealed that this brand of rubber bands could not withstand exposure to open air or water for more than a year. So, unless the bundles were somehow protected from the elements, they must have become buried at Tina Bar within a year of the hijacking.
This is so fucking complicated.
Seems to be that Cooper or someone else deliberately buried the money. Did Cooper survive and bury the money himself? Did someone else bury the money after stumbling upon Cooper's remains?
If you're in the chat, DB Cooper, just let me know, man. This is crazy. I want to hear more about it.
It's managed to elude investigators for decades. Suffice it to say,
I didn't know any of this part.
Within a mystery. Since Ingram's discovery in 1980, both Tina Bar and the grounds around the Washougal River have been subjected to numerous searches.
I have not seen that, nobly.
But to date, there's been no sign of Cooper, nor the rest of the money.
You know, if Cooper was as smart as we think he is, he would have done all of this while having a full beard, and then when he jumped, he would have shaved the beard off. Just to add another layer of good ideas to it.
Cooper did not survive his daring escape. It would not make for a very thrilling conclusion to this story, but that's the thing about stories. They're usually far more exciting than reality. While there is no hard evidence for nor against Cooper's survival, the assumption that he fell to his death is not without merit. When Cooper leaped into the darkness, Flight 305 was plowing through a frigid rainstorm at roughly 170 knots.
Oh no! Oh no!
The wind was so violent that it ripped out a placard from the aft stairwell.
Oh Jesus Christ! He just fucking got blasted!
Almost directly below the estimated flight path. To say that Cooper was not dressed for the occasion would be an understatement. The ground beneath him, meanwhile, was obscured by multiple layers of clouds, which likely means that Cooper jumped without knowing his precise location. Even if he could see the ground and had a specific drop zone in mind, the parachute he selected was non-steerable, meaning he would not have been able to steer his descent towards a specific landing spot, thus precluding any potential coordination with an accomplice.
So many problems.
On the ground.
He also forgot to account for the dragons that hover over Portland, Oregon.
His actual competence level is up for debate.
And also, on that night, there was a javelin tossing competition.
2 pairs of parachutes, 2 primary and 2 reserve, to make the authorities believe that he intended to take a hostage. That is precisely what happened, as the FBI contemplated, but eventually decided against sabotaging the chutes, as they did not want to risk the life of an innocent civilian. But in their haste to obtain them, they unintentionally provided Cooper with a non-functional dummy chute intended for training purposes. This mishap seems to have gone unnoticed by Cooper because that dummy chute was one of the 2 missing from the plane. Not only that, but Cooper chose the older and technically inferior parachute out of the 2 primary chutes provided.
Nice.
So in both cases, it seems like Cooper made the worst possible choice. But there
Thanks, Resub
are
AJ,
other ways to
Absolver, and the
interpret
Gift
this
Sub Banana.
information. For instance, it's possible that
Thanks,
Cooper used the
Resub
dummy
Canned.
chute not as a reserve, but as a means to secure the bag of money. In fact, that is precisely what Cooper tried to do with the functional reserve chute. First, he tried to place the money in the chute's canopy before removing some of the suspension lines and wrap them around the bag. Perhaps he used the dummy chute for a similar purpose. And Cooper's decision to use the older primary chute is not necessarily an indication of inexperience. It could also be a sign of familiarity because the chute he left behind was a civilian luxury chute, while the one he used was a military chute. The argument is that Cooper might have been trained as, say, a paratrooper, and chose the older military chute because that's the one with which he was most familiar.
I'm starting to doubt it.
One other
I don't
reason
think
to
so.
suspect that Cooper had a military
You could have
background.
given him a giant pair of pants and he probably would have jumped off holding them.
Cooper mentioned that the
I think he's
McCord
dumb
Air
as fuck
Force
now.
Base was only 20 minutes away from the Seattle-Tacoma airport. At the time, that was an accurate assessment and might suggest a military background. Apart from the potential military connections, Cooper may even have had links to the Central Intelligence Agency.
I doubt
You
it.
see, the type of aircraft which
He was
Cooper
probably
chose
like
to
a Redditor
hijack,
before
a
Reddit
Boeing
existed.
727, was also used by the CIA to covertly drop agents and supplies during the Vietnam War. A task for which the Boeing 727 was uniquely qualified due to its distinctive aft stairway. So it's fairly safe to assume that Cooper chose to hijack a Boeing 727 specifically because it provided a relatively safe means of escape. Whether he learned of this from the CIA or came to that conclusion
Thanks, DBC.
independently is
Never
another
sub
question.
Sugar Daddy.
However, the fact that Cooper chose to hijack a flight operated by Northwest Airlines was apparently random chance. When Tina Mucklow asked Cooper about his motives, he responded, "It's not because I have a grudge towards your airline, it's just because I have a grudge."
Oh, that's kind of
Further
fucking
clarified
cool.
That Flight 305
Woo.
just happened to be in the right place at the
You're
right
not trapped
time.
in here with me.
Even so,
I'm trapped
it's
in here
clear
with
that
frigid
Cooper
weather
came
temperatures and a
prepared.
bad plan.
He seemed to know a great deal about aircraft and aviation. He appeared to be familiar with the local terrain. He maintained a low profile to avoid a panic. He covered his eyes with a pair of glasses to conceal his identity. He left very little evidence behind, and he demanded 4 parachutes to force the assumption that he was taking a hostage. He was even cunning enough to reclaim the note which he'd initially given to Florence Schaffner. Apart from the name he wrote on his plane ticket, there are no other samples of Cooper's handwriting. But for all his planning and cunning, it seems Cooper did not give enough thought to his eventual escape. Not
Yeah, the
only
most
did he
important
fail to
part.
specify a route, but he was forced to
I
make
did
a
it.
last-minute destination
Now I'll just
change
kill
from
myself
Mexico
out here, I
City
guess.
to Reno. He could have demanded more appropriate parachuting equipment like a pair of boots, a helmet, or jumpsuit. He could even have specified the ransom to be delivered in larger denominations to make it lighter and less cumbersome to carry.
Thanks to Tier 1,
Assuming
Joe.
he did survive the fall and made it safely to the ground, he may then have had to make his way through a dense, partially snow-covered forest in nothing but loafers and a trench coat in late November. I get the distinct impression that Cooper's escape was much more of a leap of faith than a carefully executed jump. On the other hand, authorities never received a
I love
missing
the
persons
animation
report
he
in
has here
action
with
the
it too. He
description
looks
of
like he's really
Cooper
fucking
in the
struggling
wake of the
falling out.
hijacking. This might suggest that Cooper did survive and that he swiftly and quietly resumed his normal routine. Furthermore, other hijackers have performed similar stunts, and many of them did survive even if they were quickly apprehended. Finally, the simplest explanation for how 3 bundles of cash ended up at Tina Bar is human intervention. At the end of the day, most of this is based on nothing but supposition. Without any concrete evidence of Cooper's demise, it leaves the door wide open to the far more exciting proposition that he did, in fact, survive.
Nah, I've now been convinced that he's a fucking idiot. There's no chance. This man
By
dove
time
off in the middle of the
press got
night
wind of the hijacking,
in the
FBI
worst
had
possible
already
conditions. He
begun
should
to
have.
investigate
It's like he jumped into a
potential
volcano.
suspects. Among them was
He would have had a
man
higher chance of
reportedly
surviving
with
that.
Initials DB and surname Cooper. This Cooper was quickly eliminated as a suspect, but due to a mix-up by the press, the name Dan Cooper was confused for DB Cooper, and the rest is history. While Dan Cooper is most likely a pseudonym, there is a comic book series of the same name. The comic is written in French and centers around a Canadian pilot named Dan Cooper. While the comic was not translated into English nor sold in the United States before 1971, it was available in Canada, which has a large French-speaking population. Given that American and Canadian accents can be difficult to
Tier 1
distinguish,
MD wall.
it's possible that Cooper, who was described as having no discernible accent, was a bilingual Canadian. This might even be supported by something that Cooper might have said. You see, when the captain relayed Cooper's demands to air traffic control, he used the phrase negotiable American currency. It seems doubtful that an American citizen would specify American currency, so perhaps Cooper was not American. The problem is, we don't know if this is a direct quote from Cooper or paraphrasing by the captain. For instance, notes taken by the crew during the hijacking merely contain the phrase negotiable currency, while testimonies provided by the crew after the hijacking include phrases like $200,000 in cash and circulated US currency. So Cooper might have been Canadian. And
I think Cooper might have been an alien.
Dan Cooper
At this point, it could be anything, anyone. We could all be DB Cooper.
Taken his name from something or someone else. Nearly half a century has gone by since the hijacking took place, and in that time, thousands of suspects have been questioned and investigated. It would obviously be impossible to cover all of them here, but let's take a look at some of the people that at some point or another have been suspected of being DB Cooper.
It's just a picture of my dad. This man loves working on old cars.
First became a suspect.
He's never parachuted, but we thought it was worth checking out anyway.
He seems like a solid candidate. He was a decorated Army paratrooper and helicopter pilot. He had experience with explosives. He had an extensive criminal record. He had an uncle named John Cooper who was an avid skydiver.
Whoa.
He was expelled from the army only months before the hijacking, which might suggest a motive. After all, the hijacker did say he had a grudge. When confronted by journalists and private investigators, Rackstraw would neither confirm nor outright deny that he was DB Cooper.
It's him
Instead,
then.
he'd say things like, "I could have been," or "I would not discount myself."
Actually,
On the other hand, Rackstraw had light-colored eyes, which
and
Cooper
thanks
did
Cooper
not.
again.
More significantly, Rackstraw was only 28 years of age at the time of the hijacking. This is well outside the range of ages reported by the crew and passengers, most of whom believed Cooper was in his mid-40s. Kenneth Christensen first became a suspect in 2003 when his brother noticed certain parallels between him and Cooper. Christensen had briefly served as a paratrooper in World War II, and since 1953 he'd worked for Northwest Airlines as both a mechanic and a flight attendant. He was 45 years old at the time of the hijacking. He was left-handed, which Cooper might have been. For instance, Cooper used his left hand to interact with his briefcase, and the clip-on tie he left on board was affixed with a tie clasp applied from the left. Shortly before he died in 1994, Christensen had supposedly told his brother, "There is something you should know, but I cannot tell you." After his passing, his family discovered over $200,000 in his bank accounts. To top it all off, Florence Schaffner stated that photographs of Christensen bore a strong resemblance to Cooper.
Why don't you check the serial numbers on that
Christensen
money?
did not match the physical description of Cooper. He was both shorter and lighter. While Schaffner did see a strong resemblance, she remarked that Cooper had more hair, and that is supported by the composite sketches. And there was nothing suspicious about the large sums of money which he simply earned by selling land.
This is the
Richard
70s, it wasn't
McCoy
digital, I'm
first
sure he
became
had
a
it
suspect
physical.
In 1972 when he hijacked a Boeing 727 and escaped via the aft stairway, much like DB Cooper. Because of the significant overlap between the two hijackings, some believe they must have been committed by the same person. McCoy used a fake name, he used a fake hand grenade to threaten the crew, he used handwritten notes to issue his demands. Both McCoy and Cooper used the phrase "no funny stuff" as a warning to the crew. McCoy demanded $500,000 in cash and 4 parachutes. McCoy also bailed out the back of the plane once they passed over his hometown in the state of Utah. Apart from the similar modus operandi, McCoy had also served in the Vietnam War as a demolitions expert and a helicopter pilot. McCoy did actually survive the fall and managed to evade authorities for 2 full days before he was apprehended and sentenced to 45 years in prison. Before his death in 1974, McCoy refused to confirm or deny that he was DB Cooper. On the other hand, McCoy was an avid recreational skydiver and even came prepared with a skydiving helmet and jumpsuit. He gave very specific instructions about the flight path. In addition to the fake hand grenade, McCoy also used an unloaded handgun to threaten the crew. He failed to retrieve one of the notes he'd given to a flight attendant. He was only 29 years of age at the time of the hijacking, and all 3 flight attendants were quite certain that McCoy was not Cooper. While there are meaningful parallels between these two cases,
a lot of
McCoy
parallels.
might simply have been a copycat who'd read about DB Cooper in the news.
That is a lot of fucking parallels, though. Holy shit.
Dwayne Weber first became a suspect in 1995 when, shortly before his death, he supposedly told his wife, "I've got a secret to tell you. I am Dan Cooper." Following his deathbed confession, Weber's widow recalled a number of fascinating details.
Actually gives some
She claims to have found
DB
a
Cooper
bag
himself.
resembling the one used in the hijacking. She claims Weber had sustained a knee injury after jumping out of a plane. Weber supposedly had a nightmare about leaving his fingerprints on the aft stairs. And a year before the money was discovered at Tina Bar, Weber had allegedly paid a quick visit to the same location. In addition, Weber was a World War II veteran, he had an extensive criminal record, he'd matched the physical description, and he was 47 years old in 1971. On the other hand, Weber's fingerprints did not match any of the prints collected from Flight 305. Although, to be fair, there's no way to know if any of those prints actually belonged to Cooper. Furthermore, Weber's DNA did not match a DNA sample collected from the tie clasp. But once again, there's no way to know if the DNA on the tie clasp actually came from the hijacker and not someone else. What's so frustrating is that the FBI likely had a much better source of DNA at one point. If you recall, 8 cigarette butts were collected from the scene, and there's a good chance they were all suffused with Cooper's DNA. The problem is, that evidence was lost at some point, and has not turned up since.
How? What do you do? Shove him up his butthole before jumping off? How did...
William Smith first became a suspect in 2018. Smith served in the Navy.
I totally forgot about that.
And likely had some
they probably did
experience
too.
with parachuting. He was 43 years old at the time of the hijacking. He had dark brown eyes. He matched the physical description. He shared a certain likeness with the composite sketches, especially this speculative sketch of an older DB Cooper. A student named
That's definitely a drawing from his grandson or something.
Attended the same high school.
That is just that man.
Smith worked as a
drawn by his son.
For a railroad company for most of his life, but in 1970 the company filed for bankruptcy. As a consequence, Smith lost his pension, which might suggest a motive. He could, for instance, have developed a grudge towards the airline industry for their role in bringing about the downfall of the rail transportation industry. It's further speculated that Smith could have used his knowledge of railroad networks to hop on a train and escape undetected. On the other hand, Smith spent his entire life in the northeastern United States. Given that the hijacking occurred on the other side of the country and was committed by someone who at least appeared to be familiar with the local terrain, Smith is not the most ideal candidate. However, the fact that Smith worked as a yardmaster is interesting. You see, the tie that Cooper left behind was recently examined using an electron microscope, which uncovered various metallic particles. Some of these particles, especially pure titanium, were quite rare in 1971. This might suggest that Cooper worked as a manager at some sort of chemical or metallurgical facility, or possibly a rail yard.
I think it's him! The old man!
If nothing else, I hope this limited selection of suspects illustrates just how difficult it is to be certain when you have so little evidence to work with.
Yeah, that was fucking fascinating.
5 individuals look nothing alike, yet any one of them could be DB Cooper. Was Cooper really in his mid-40s, or did he simply look old for his age? Did Cooper really serve in the military?
Yeah, what if they all did it? There was 5 Coopers that kept switching out.
In 2016, the FBI had to admit defeat and officially close down the case. Unless someone stumbles upon Cooper's remains or manages to track down the rest of the money, it seems there is little hope of resolution. Did Cooper survive? I have no idea.
No, he
But
didn't.
as long
No
as that
chance.
possibility cannot be dismissed, the legend of DB Cooper will no doubt persist.
Makes the prime, David. In my professional opinion, I think there's no fucking chance after hearing all of the conditions he would have had to go through to survive, that he actually survived. I think what could have fucking happened is he jumped out of the plane and just got split in half and gored by just awful temperatures, He probably went through like a fucking swarm of locusts too with everything he was saying was going on at the time. I think there's no chance that man fucking tapped down on the ground. He fucking died mid-flight. I had no idea the conditions were that bad when he made the jump. I didn't know half of this shit, actually. I only knew the general overview. Thanks to Prime Blammo. What a great watch. I can't believe I haven't seen that one. I know what Chubby Emu is. Fuck! Is there any new DB Cooper info now? Now I'm so glued. We have so much technology now, we should be able to recreate the entire history of that tie that DB Cooper left behind. We should be able to take that tie, put it in my fucking hard drive, and be able to see the entire manufacturing process and who owned the tie all the way up until it was on the plane. Here's the Prime Nar and the Tier 1 Swebs. I don't even know what that means, James. I'm not caught up on the drama on that one. Let's see. DB Cooper. RP is DB Cooper. Yeah, that'll be my new character in GTA RP. What is the newest development here? This video was in 2020, so do we have any startling new intel in 2021? Shit. Shit. Doesn't look like it. What a fascinating story. Is there any others like that? DB Cooper, flight attendant Tina Mucklow as the key to mysterious skyjacking, but does her story hold the answers? Cicada 3011's not terrible. And it's not 3011, is it? 3301? Yeah, it's 3301. This?
Since pilots couldn't see out of the plane because of angled landing, engineers put together a solution.
The Concorde featured a droop snoot.
Droop snoot?
Yeah, the snoot would droop.
The snoot drooped.
Solid. That will do it.
I'm gonna try to smoke my own weight in weed eventually.
Holy shit.
There's only time in front of me, and I've already done 4.2 pounds. I can do it.
What a goal. Wow.
Hi, I'm Tony Greenhand.
Hey, Tony.
26, and I'm a professional joint roller.
The National Joint League. Holy fuck, the NJL?
Basically jump
That's
out of
huge.
bed and start rolling joints too. I make coffee and I start rolling, and while my coffee's being made, I'm like, boom, let's do it.
Tony
Before I got
truly
into
is
joint rolling,
an
I was rolling
artist.
weed. It was pretty basic. I also bred cannabis, but just on the side. I'm known more for the joints now, which is a surprise to me.
Oh, wow, what the fuck? Tony's good. They should sell his joints right next to like Banksy's work.
My mom was
Jackson
a
Pollock.
clerical at a police department, so she absolutely hates what I do.
It's kind of
You
like
see that I'm
balloon
making
animals for
sleeves
adults.
Here, and then I'll fill the sleeves instead of rolling these, and that's because I want this to be 100% perfect. Since it's gonna be the barrel of the gun, I need it to be straight all the way across.
That's pretty cool, actually. What the fuck?
He's got a private jet, and he's coming to pick it up.
So people are paying $7 grand for like a artistic joint? What a good deal. I mean, Tony seems like a good guy. I mean, he just loves to roll joints, I guess. I mean, they were pretty cool. They were not lame like I was expecting. Oh my fucking god, I know this. Oh shit. I remember this. This was like when I was still new to Reddit. Yeah, I remember this. This was solved. If I remember, I'll let the video play and then I'll go off memory and see if I'm right. He's a tier 1 Guatemalan god. I did not know her name was Elisa Lam. It wasn't solved recently. It was solved pretty soon after this video aired. Was it real or she faked it? Bro, she fucking died. What do you mean? Did she fake it? That'd be the ultimate prank. What I remember most about this is this hit Reddit. It got really big on Reddit, and the Reddit detectives went hard. Like, they were going in on this video. I remember reading all kinds of theories. This was also around the time where Slender Man was still popular, so I saw a lot of Slender Man theories that she was trying to escape from him or some shit. Like, it got weird quick. Does it show how she died? No. So I'll just tell you what happens once the video ends, because the video is super weird. But what happens is she eventually was found in a water tank on the roof. She died. Yeah, so on top of this hotel, she was found in a water tank, drowned. And the explanation, if I remember correctly, this is all off memory. One of her friends came forward and said that they had actually done acid earlier that day, which explains all the weird hand movements and shit, and what must have happened is she just got real confused and then ended up wandering into the roof and fell into the water tank or some shit. I'm going off memory, so I don't know if that's right. So it had to do with stopping her medication. They said there was no evidence of trauma, assault, or suicide. So bipolar being a big factor. Yeah, it doesn't really give a very good explanation as to what happened, but it does solve a lot of the questions, like such as how she got on the roof, saying that it was easily accessible via fire escape and the tank lids were open. But it doesn't say how she closed the tank lid from the inside. Yeah, so it doesn't seem like it really has a good explanation. Yeah, it was open, but it was also closed when they found her, which means she would have had to have closed the lid from the inside, which is apparently not easy. Oh, it was open when they found her. Oh, what? Wait, didn't it just say ignoring the problem of how it was closed? What? Didn't I read that somewhere? Where did I just read that? Oh. Hotel employee found the body, said the lid was open at the time, removing the issue of how she could have closed the lid from the inside. Got it. Got it.
The Dyatlov Pass incident. A
Yeah,
case that
Dyatlov.
many consider to be one of the greatest mysteries of all time. As over 60 years later, there is no agreed upon conclusion to what exactly had happened
They give
to
some
those hikers.
whippers.
And part of what has always drawn me to this mystery is its uniqueness, as I always thought nothing like it could ever happen again. But little did I know, it already has. It was August 9th, 1993, as a group of Ukrainian kayakers paddled their way through a remote river in southern Siberia. The river tour would take them near the vast Khamar Daban mountain range and give them a full view of its beauty. As
I
they
gotta rip
followed
some
the
ass.
twisting river, the
Ooh,
group would
the
catch a
Charles
glimpse
White
of
ass
something
incident.
moving in the woods. It was a young lady wandering aimlessly with a frozen expression on her face. She was all alone with blood on her jacket.
Uh-oh.
The kayakers would call out to her, asking who she was and if she needed help, but the girl didn't answer. In fact, she didn't say a word. Whatever she had seen on that mountain range had traumatized her, to the point where
Is it
she
it's
couldn't
Canadian
speak,
and
having barely
knock?
spoken of the incident
Thanks
to
a lot
this
for
day.
watching, man.
The kayakers would bring her back to civilization, where it would be discovered that her name was Valentina Yudachenko.
Hello,
a hiker
Valentina.
who had been visiting the area as part of a tourist expedition through the mountain range.
Let's give Sub Shack.
But the concerning part was, she wasn't alone. Or at least she hadn't been when she started her hike. In fact, she had been with 6 other hikers during her trip. Hikers who were nowhere to be found.
Is the
What
prime
happened in those
Bjorn?
mountains that was so
Bjorn.
traumatic that it left Valentina in a state of shock for years, and caused the disappearance of her entire crew. Well, the story is as strange and disturbing as it gets. It all started on August 2nd, 1990.
Real quick, anyone that's seen this, is there anything TOS worrisome in here? They don't show any bodies or anything, right? I'm gonna assume not, but just want to cover bases. We good?
Khamar Daban. The group consisted of 24-year-old Tatiana Filipenko, 23-year-old Alexander Kresin, as well as Denis Vachin, Victoria Zalasova, Tamar Babanov, and of course, Valentina Yudachenko, each of whom were merely teenagers.
Like Prime, Tateax, and
Despite
Loki.
their youth, they were all well-trained and
No worries,
experienced
Justin, thank you.
hikers, and the group was led by 41-year-old Ludmila Korovina, an internationally renowned master in pedestrian tourism. They were a well-prepared and run group, and the Khamar Daban Mountains were not viewed as being dangerous,
Thanks, Sub-Alvinor.
especially in the middle of summer. Second,
23-year-old teenagers, yeah.
Nearby trails.
I don't know what to tell you.
One of which was even led by Ludmila's 16-year-old daughter, Natalia.
I know all about that, Jukes.
Meeting up the very
I
next
talked about it
day
as well.
in the mountains along with their respective crews, before Ludmila and company would continue on towards Ludyanka, their final destination. However, the forecast couldn't have been more wrong.
I'll look into it later, Crone.
On and off spouts of freezing rain poured down upon the group and predicted an oncoming snowstorm as the group climbed the Kanulu Mountain. And by August 4th, the snowstorm was in full effect, pummeling the exhausted hikers and forcing them to reroute and miss their connection with
Just
Natalia's
get an
group.
umbrella, nerds.
Drained of energy, Ludmila would make the call to set up camp. near
Who would
the top
take
of
this
their
photo?
summit
They look
and rest
miserable.
for the night. A move that to this day is still questioned, as the hikers were merely half an hour away from a shelter that stood on top of that very mountain. The sun would rise the next day to more stormy weather, with the snow continuing to
Thanks,
fall
Rusa
around
Blue
them.
and Prime Bond.
Ludmila knew that staying where they were would only spell trouble.
Yeah, I read about it, Dor.
So she ordered the group down the mountain and into the cover of the woods below. They'd never make it there. Just minutes into their descent, Alexander Kresin would begin to stumble. The man considered to be the strongest of the group would fall to the ground as his mouth began to fill with foam. Blood would rush out of his ears and his nose as he laid there seizing violently in front of his group. The hikers stood there stunned. Kresin was in perfect health, and just minutes ago he was fine. And now he laid in front of them, dying. They had been outside for mere minutes.
It's a haunted
Already
trail.
one of their crew members were down. The 5 hikers continued moving forward without their leader and their strongest member, trudging ahead in a state of shock and confusion. However, this descent wouldn't last long. As they walked out of sight of Ludmila and their dying friend, screams started ringing out from on top of the hill. It was Ludmila. They rushed back up to see what was the matter,
A bear.
only to find a disturbing scene.
A
Alexander
polar bear.
was lying there, dead, and Ludmila was dying too,
What?
unable to move and on her last breath. To this day, it's still unclear what she died from, with reports saying that she had suffered from the same mysterious illness that Alexander seemed to have, while others say that it may have just been a heart attack.
They show a body? Well, it can't be one of theirs unless they just started taking photos. Here, let me just double check. Scanning through it right now, I don't see anything like that. All I'm doing is spoiling the fucking story. Also, early hypothesis, the lady that survived, Valentina, she killed them and made up the story. Like, this shit is making no sense right now.
But either way, chaos
Thank you, Max.
erupted from the group. Both Victoria and Tamar would quickly collapse on the ground, twitching violently and bleeding the same way that Kresin had. They began tearing at their clothes, ripping them off and grabbing their necks as if they were being choked, all the whilst they desperately tried to gasp for air. Valentina rushed to help.
Sounds like something out of
Victoria,
Dr. Stone, like they
in an instant,
went
the
to like a
suffering
poison
girl
well.
would sink her teeth into Valentina, biting her and forcing her to back off.
What?
While this happened, Dennis started to run away from the group out of fear and confusion, having no idea what was happening to his friends or why. He could only watch as, one by one, they began to lose their
Thanks
minds.
again, Liam. Thanks to the
and their
resub Niners
lives.
rule.
With Dennis hiding from the group, Tatiana
Really appreciate it,
also
Max.
began to tear her warm clothing off, exposing her body to the freezing cold elements. She too grabbed for her throat and acted as if her own body was torturing her. Once on the ground, she would turn her attention to the rock that laid next to her, and in an instant she would begin to smash her head against it, over and over again, until her body would go limp. In a matter of
Why do you keep saying hypothermia? In everything I've ever heard and learned about hypothermia, I've never heard about someone suffering from it, ripping their clothes off and turning into a zombie. Why do people keep saying hypothermia? Is there something I'm not understanding about it? 20 to 50% of hypothermia deaths are associated with paradoxical undressing. Oh, so this is real. This typically occurs during moderate or severe hypothermia as the person becomes disoriented, confused, and combative. Wow. They may begin discarding their clothing, which in turn increases the rate of heat loss. This is a real thing. I've never heard of this. In all of those, like, survival movies and shit, you never see the main character that's suffering from hypothermia getting naked and slamming his dick on a rock. This is interesting. Paradoxical undressing.
Succumbed to their mysterious symptoms. Dennis would emerge to help Valentina, as the two were the only ones left who hadn't faltered. However, their health was starting to wither as well. They remained in the forest, close to the site where their whole group had just died, unsure of what to do next.
Thanks to Risa Basling, and have fun, Naughty.
I can't imagine the silence
And yes, I've heard of that
confusion they
Guatemalan.
must have been experiencing.
And
As they
maybe
stood
we
there
will.
together after witnessing all their friends drop dead in front of them. Friends that a mere hour ago were in perfect health. And the stark fate wasn't quite finished with the group either, as a short time later, Dennis would collapse alongside Valentina, as he too began bleeding profusely, leaving Valentina as the only living member of the group. Completely traumatized and scared for her life,
Thanks a bit, Jai.
Valentina took supplies from the camp and proceeded to
Guatemalan.
wander alone in the forest. She did so for 3 days before being found by the kayakers.
Oh, okay, never mind. Probably this is probably what you were talking about. So you're telling me, and we'll go back to the video in a second, but I have to skip the bodies. So you're telling me that Valentina somehow hiked for 3 more days after her entire group all got hypothermia at the same time? I feel like she'd be very close to it as well. Unless she just had, like, really warm clothing. I don't know. Judging by the video here, it'd be kind of hard to like hide this as a murder. So I fall back on my theory. I don't think it's right. I think I'm wrong.
A story that seemingly makes no sense. 6 healthy people turning insane and dropping dead in the matter of minutes.
Just play audio.
Which
Fine.
prompts the...
I mean, there's not a lot here, but sure.
группу и попросила подняться
It's in another language too, so.
Таня достала
Thanks to the huge tier 3.
before the bodies
Resub
were
Gimji
discovered,
and
as they
Kukius.
received no
Darth
guidance
Cuck.
from the deeply traumatized Valentina. And what the rescue party saw when they stumbled upon the scene would shake them to their core. With one member saying it was a scary picture, the hikers were lying on a small ledge, some huddled together,
Oh wait,
some a little
I forgot
distance
these.
away. They had a story that seemingly makes no sense. 6 healthy people turning insane and dropping dead in the matter of minutes. Which prompts the
I didn't know it
all-important
came up twice.
question, what happened to
Still
those
blurred.
hikers?
It's fine.
A question that to this day remains without a true answer, where autopsy reports ruled that the 6 hikers had died of hypothermia
Yeah.
and protein deficiency, pointing to the idea that the group had not been eating enough throughout their trip, But the more I look into this, the less I believe that this is possible.
What? Why?
Just looking over the symptoms, this cause of death does explain some of their behaviors, such as the paradoxical...
Hey, I just learned about that! Fuck
However,
yeah.
It fails to explain them all.
Makes a
The
prime
biting,
Truman and
the banging
Dodo.
of their heads against rocks, the foaming of the mouth, and the bleeding are all inconsistent with this conclusion. So how could hypothermia have set in so quickly?
Must have been
After
very
all,
cold.
It was summertime, and despite the snow, the temperature was likely barely below freezing. Also, if hypothermia were truly to blame, and they were in such bad shape that each hiker died in the span of minutes, then how could Valentina have continued
That's
to
what I
survive
said.
for 3 more days? It just doesn't make sense. And as for the protein deficiency, Valentina herself had mentioned that the group had eaten well throughout their trip, and had even ate together on the morning of their deaths. It's also worth noting that they ate as a group together, with each member eating the same thing. So how had Valentina survived if she had eaten what they had eaten? And has caused myself and many others to doubt this theory. But if it wasn't hypothermia and protein deficiency, then what could it have been? As is the case with most mysteries, some have blamed the supernatural.
Yeah, it was Bigfoot!
Otherworldly had happened to the group, while others have taken a more scientific stance, blaming things like low frequency in the area, which caused the group to go in a panic.
What?
But I have a hard time believing either of these, as the area was not all that remote, and it's well studied by scientists. Plus, this doesn't line up with Valentina's testimony, as well as the conditions of their bodies. Another possibility is that the group had eaten something poisonous on their trip, an idea that is certainly possible, as Ludmilla was often known to be a forager. So perhaps some sort of fungus or
Jesus,
berry,
yeah.
giving it to the group to eat.
That's the
without
worst leader to
realizing
have.
that it was actually toxic. A poisonous mushroom could certainly cause the hikers to hallucinate and potentially bleed internally. But the issue is, Valentina never mentioned that the group had foraged for food.
Well, ask
she is
her.
on record saying that they had eaten well. If they had ate something suspicious out there, she certainly would have told authorities.
Needs to give some
Plus, if they had
Archer
all
in the
eaten
Prime Bell.
together, then how had Valentina not been poisoned? And finally, Ludmilla was an expert at this kind of stuff, so it's unlikely that she would make a mistake of this magnitude, especially given how well she knew the area. But if it hadn't been the food that had poisoned them, then perhaps it was something in the air.
Chemtrails.
Russia has long since been known for their development of deadly chemical weapons, producing them in secret and testing them in undisclosed locations. And around this time, it's documented that they had a specific interest in deadly nerve agents, chemicals that could have caused the hikers to snap and act the way they did, as well as causing their bleeding and foaming of the mouth. Because of this, many think it's possible that the Russians had been testing or even dumping their chemicals in the area where the hikers just happened to be.
What?
After all, in 1993, the Soviet Union was already disbanded, an event that caused thousands of these chemical weapons to go missing, the best possibility for explaining how it happened so quickly. Now, following this theory even more, the case gained virtually no media coverage, besides for a single local article, and it's barely known to this day, pushing some to believe that it could have been covered up. And there's also one final key detail that I found in my research that could point to this theory being true. After authorities were alerted that a group of tourists were missing, they didn't set out a search party until a full week had gone by, despite there being clear weather. Some online have taken this as an indication that authorities were waiting for the toxins in the area to clear before beginning their search. But there are some issues.
No, I don't know that one.
First of all, the location where the hikers were visiting was fairly popular, and they were a mere 100 meters away from a shelter that was designed for people to stay in.
This channel's popular
so why would
garbage.
The military test or dump weapons
I've
there?
never heard of the Khamar
Did they
Daban
select
incident.
A more remote area?
The fuck are you talking about?
Also, how would Valentina? It's a frustrating case as the answer seems so hard to settle on. potentially because it's been incredibly underreported.
Thanks to resub.
And the reports
you
that
Roanoke.
are out there are filled with
And
quite
yeah, I
a
know
bit
that
of
one's sloth.
speculation rather than fact. Also, of the original articles written on this, many were made in other languages, which may have led to things being lost in translation over the years.
Oh, maybe.
And though Valentina's
talk.
testimony tells us what had happened on those mountains, it's also possible she had misremembered things, especially given the extreme shock and trauma she had experienced. She had also just recently started discussing this event, leaving things to be forgotten over the years. So with all these factors, it's possible we may not even have the full story, which just adds more mystery to this strange case. And given the lack of attention it's received,
They weren't
it's
malnourished
possible
is
we
the
may
thing.
never know for sure what happened in those mountains.
If I had to wager a guess, I'd still go with hypothermia. And what do you mean popular garbage? I've never... fucking Khamar Daban has, like, nothing about it. Yeah, I think hypothermia. I think it's unlikely she poisoned them. I feel like that would have been easily detected. I also don't think that, they ate anything poisonous. Considering they weren't malnourished, so they were just eating shit they brought. I think it had to do with literally just hypothermia. And then she just happens to be stronger, built differently. No, I have not seen this one from Nexpo. Let me see if I like the premise. The name sounded so familiar, though. I think the Prime Twilight. And no, I've not heard of them before, Taylor.
Friday.
Sleep well, chubby.
Joseph Shones was scouting some back roads in the Plumas National Forest. He spent the better part of the day navigating his Volkswagen in hopes of returning with his family the next day.
Sure, Rip. No
However,
problem.
due to harsh weather conditions, his venture led to his car becoming stuck around 5:30 p.m. Miles away from help and with dwindling options, he hopped out of his car to give it a push.
This is just like...
In a strikingly unlucky turn of events, though,
why am I blanking on the name? Let me know.
would lead to him enduring a heart attack at the worst possible place and the worst possible time. He returns to the confines of his vehicle, enduring the pain and contemplating on what to do.
Oh, this is Dyatlov Pass.
He'd catch his biggest break. Two sets of headlights coming from the opposite direction, and the shadows of what looked like a woman, a baby, and a group of guys walking towards him while engaging in conversation.
No, it's not good.
After
Okay.
realizing that this could be his ticket home, he fumbled out of the car and began calling for help. Once he started doing so, the headlights turned dark, and the conversation fell silent. A couple hours later, with his car still running, Shones would encounter another anomaly. Flashlights shining in the far distance.
He's the Prime
As
Seraphim.
expected, he'd jump out once more, vehemently pleading for one of them to notice him. However, this too felt unsuccessful. Another couple of hours pass, and Shones' car runs out of gas. Fortunately, though, by this point, he felt well enough to exit his vehicle and begin a trek up the road towards a lodge roughly 8 miles away.
Thanks a bit, Chumsky.
It was on this walk when he'd witnessed a 1969 Mercury Montego with no passengers inside. Considering the circumstances, and having spotted numerous people in the last few hours, he didn't think much of it.
I love the visuals here.
Took him to the early
I love
morning
this
of the next day.
style.
And there, he was able to obtain medical treatment and much needed help to get his car out of there. What he failed to realize, however, was the fact that on this journey, he passed the vehicle of 5 men that would soon become enveloped in one of the strangest unexplained mysteries. in
Thanks a Prime
history.
Sporksy. The resub Franco. Are these real stories? No, I actually made these up. And I've, of course, thrown them throughout the internet for people to pick up on. Sleep well, dead inside.
February 24th.
Here's the 5 gift sub stylo.
It was on this day when the lives of 5 longtime friends would converge. 30-year-old Jack Madruga would make his rounds within Yuba City in Oroville, California to pick up the others for a night out at a Chico State basketball game. 29-year-old William Sterling, 24-year-old Jack Hewitt, 32-year-old Theodore Wire, and 25-year-old Gary Mathias made up this close-knit bunch, commonly referred to as the Boys.
The Boys!
Before competing in a basketball game of their own.
Fuck yeah.
The group played for a team called the Gateway Gators, an extracurricular segment of the Yuba City Gateway program. This was a rehabilitation center aimed at helping them learn a trade while overcoming their mild intellectual disabilities and mental health issues. It was because of this notion that the group lived with their parents, and with this came the expectation that they'd return home later that night. Jack Madruga, the owner of his prized 1969 Mercury Montego, was known to have recently worked as a dishwasher at a local fruit company. He was keen on handling his finances. However, due to what family describes as him being slow in thought, he found it difficult to maintain a job. William Sterling was known to be Madruga's best friend. He was deeply religious.
Next to the tier 1 elongated dwarf.
Reading literature to console patients in mental hospitals.
He seems very young.
The oldest of the bunch.
Yeah, he definitely looks like the oldest.
However, was known to lack basic common sense. According to his brother, he was known to have spent over $100 on pencils for no reason. He was employed for a bit as a janitor and a snack bar clerk, but was later urged by his family to quit, since
thank you, dwarf.
They believed he was causing problems.
Sleep well, Lynn. Thank you.
Jack Hewitt was known to be slow to react and typically hung around Wire. He was taken under his wing, so to speak, and frequently required his help to perform basic tasks, such as dialing phone numbers. Gary Mathias was the most enigmatic of the group. He was the only one that lacked an intellectual disability, however, in its place, suffered severe mental health issues. The most prominent was his schizophrenia, which was the cause of his discharge from his brief time in the
Are these, like, crucial to the story that they have intellectual disabilities?
The only two in the group that possessed a driver's license.
Actually, gift sub dwarf.
And so they embarked. A roughly 1-hour trip was ahead of them, and conversation ensued surrounding sports in the anticipation of a win for themselves the very next day. The boys' uniforms were already laid out back home by their parents, so they were ready to roll. Things were going good.
Yeah, I love that shit too, Camino, as long as they're good mysteries. I'm a little skeptical on this one right now, because I can't really see the overarching mystery, but I'm interested.
p.m. Chico State's road opponent UC Davis takes the win. Considering the men's favorite team were UC Davis, it's safe to say that celebratory snacking was in order. They hit up a local convenience store by the name of Bears, where they loaded up on a Hostess cherry pie, a lemon pie,
a
Snickers bar, a marathon bar,
that's big,
a couple Pepsis,
and
a quart of milk.
Milk?
It's noted that the clerk that checked them out that night was trying to close.
Let's get fucking wild, boys. I'll get the milk and Pepsi.
Being there. Little did they know that they'd be one of the last ones to ever witness this group alive.
Thanks to resub here for the gangbang.
The boys jump back in the car and embark on their journey back home.
Oh shit! The boys have hacked him.
They didn't make it back home that night.
Thanks to resub young.
Instead of driving south, they took a detour east. Their journey that night encompassed their ride from Oroville to Chico. You would think that they'd head straight back down Highway 99 and Highway 70, but that didn't happen.
They actually called a helicopter.
Right before arriving in Oroville, the driver took a detour off of Highway 70 and onto the Oroville-Quincy Highway, a road that runs across Lake Oroville and up towards the Plumas National Forest. They drove until the road ended and continued their journey up a dirt trail until their vehicle became stuck in the snowdrift. It's unclear what happened from this point forward, but sometime after this arrival, they'd exit the confines of their car and embark into the night.
Yeah, I know who that is, Mudman.
Joe Shones' medical treatment had gone well. He paid no mind to the Mercury Montego since it wasn't out of the ordinary, and by midday, he was able to get his car gassed up and headed home. Concurrently, since the boys were nowhere to be found, the mothers of Ted Wire and William Sterling were contacting police, pleading for help and finding their children.
Ethanist.
It was out of character for every single one of them to be away from home for prolonged periods of time. And so they believed.
How the fuck did the guy walk 8 miles, rest, get gas, and walk 8 miles back, find his car, and fill it up? That guy has incredible sense of direction.
Government officials insist that this is an isolated incident. We will continue to keep.
Did the boys survive? He said twice that they did not survive, whatever happened.
Tuesday. A forest ranger scouting the area notices an abandoned turquoise Mercury Montego. It was left on an unpaved road near Elk's Retreat, a staggering 2.5 hours from where the basketball game took place. The vehicle appeared ordinary. It was unlocked, the window was down, and snack wrappers littered the seats. In the gas tank was more or less a quarter tank of gas, and by the time it was located, it wasn't stuck. Jarringly, considering how rough the terrain up this trail is, the vehicle was found with minimal damage. Yuba County PD began broadcasting the details and photos of the missing men, and for the next 5 days, their search team would scour the region. This would soon prove difficult, however, considering the fact that this was in the middle of a harsh winter in the mountains.
Thanks, Eatmeth.
It's been reported that the search team nearly lost people on a couple occasions, and by Sunday, a harsh winter storm would move in, dumping nearly 9 inches of snow in the area. It was because of this, the environmental hazards, and the fact that time was running against them that led the police to call off the search until snowmelt that spring. And as the case sat on hold, their families were frustrated, and the 5 men were left out there, isolated.
Well, or they could have found an underground society. And could have escaped the elements.
June. A group of bikers are out on a weekend ride and head up onto the sites of an abandoned Forest Service trailer at the Daniel Zink campground near Bucks Lake. The facility involved a main, large trailer in the middle with multiple smaller satellite ones around it. When they pulled in, they noticed a prominent, malodorous smell emanating from the main structure.
Uh-oh.
Immediately after,
the boys took shits.
A broken window.
Uh-oh.
They head inside, curious on what they've stumbled upon, and a body. From head to toe were bed sheets concealing their identity, and after pulling them off, they discovered that it was one of the 5 men that disappeared 4 months prior.
Thanks, Resub Blub.
It was Ted Wire, 80 pounds lighter and with a considerable beard, lending credence to the possibility that he took refuge here for more or less 2 months.
What the fuck?
In the bed, they discovered his body with his shoes missing. With that, his feet badly frostbitten.
Thanks to Tier 1 Reese.
It appeared that he passed away due to starvation and exposure to the elements. However, he strangely could have avoided this fate altogether. Since he took shelter inside of a Forest Service trailer, he had access to ample heat sources and enough canned food to last all 5 men months.
What?
They chose to stay there. While they found 12 open cans scattered throughout the room, the vast majority of them were unopened, and it also appeared that no effort was taken to block off the window that was broken when they entered. The scene? Bewildering, especially considering that it was 19 miles away from where Joe Schoen spotted their abandoned car. But all in all,
how would they not?
Investigators needed.
So why wouldn't the investigators check here? Though, like 19 miles isn't that absurd, considering that one dude walked 8 miles back and forth.
In hope for closure, search teams prowled the new focus area southeast of Bucks Lake. It would only take a day before they'd catch their next break, too. On June 8th, Police discovered the corpses of Bill Sterling and Jack Madruga nearly 5 miles.
No, I'm talking about the
south
investigators.
where
Why wouldn't they
Ted
check that campsite, is what I meant. That's what I'm
in
talking
Madruga's
about.
pocket, his car keys. It was noted that he'd been dragged a short distance and was partially eaten by animals. For Sterling, his remains were scattered around the area a few feet away. He was nothing but bones. Since the bodies were discovered closer to the vehicle and on a potential road they could have taken northbound, they believed that on their hike, the pair couldn't press on any further and met their demise through a combination of the elements and mounting fatigue.
Thanks, the resub, Anna.
2 days later,
Yeah, I guess rip,
the father
but
of
still.
Jack Hewitt discovers numerous articles of clothing belonging to him a couple of miles northeast of the service trailer. Soon after, his remains. Interestingly, a short distance west of their location, service blankets and flashlights were discovered lying by the road. This discovery led investigators to the belief that he and Gary Mathias more than likely made it to the trailer with Ted Wire and lived with him for an undetermined amount of time. Their reasoning was because of the existence of Mathias's tennis shoes left in the room that Wire was found in. The theories are tenuous, but they believe that they spent most of their final weeks alongside Ted Wire in the trailer. After he passed away, however, they wanted to get away from the corpse and set out towards the northeast to achieve that. It was on this hike that the pair would meet their demise, spending their final days exposed to Mother Nature.
And she's a real bitch.
Now, it would make perfect sense. However, to date, the remains of Gary Mathias have never been found. As of now, his missing persons case remains open, leaving questions abound surrounding the motive and the circumstances that late winter night.
So they speculate that he could have played a role in their deaths? Like, directly? He became the huge foot.
Without a doubt, there are questions about this case. The main one, though, encompasses the following. Why did they not head home? Backing up and taking a look at this case presents an anomaly that's frequently brought up. Gary Mathias. He had a friend that lived in Forbstown, a few miles away from Oroville and where the car was found. This has led many to consider the potential that Mathias had more to do with this than some were letting on. If we take a look at their route that night, mapping it from Chico to where they abandoned the car, it makes sense. The Oroville-Quincy Highway is just north of Oroville, and the potential of Gary Mathias having driven up there in the past wouldn't be far-fetched. So let's entertain the idea that Madruga was convinced. He drove the car up the Oroville-Quincy Highway and missed the turnoff to Forbstown Road. As a result of this, he kept driving and driving until he eventually became stuck miles up a mountain trail. Now up to this point.
Huh, it's interesting this has taken an extra 60 miles to find the exit.
What led the mother of Jack Madruga to think otherwise, however, was the fact that after they were stuck, why, with 5 sizable guys that could have rectified the situation with relative ease, did they decide to abandon the car and press onwards into the unknown? What was restricting them from turning back and undoing the mistake that they'd gotten themselves into? According to Jack's mother, she pled that there was some force that made them go up there. They wouldn't have fled off in the woods like a bunch of quail. We know good and well that someone made them do it. We can't visualize someone getting the upper hand on those 5 men, but we know it must have been.
So the car wasn't stuck, the car wasn't damaged, they could have just turned around?
The circumstances at the time, postulating the potential of nefarious activity wouldn't be out of the ordinary. The state that Jack Madruga's car was found in led to even further questions than it did answers. According to reports, his car was found in immaculate condition, something almost unheard of considering the rugged terrain that existed on the road they'd taken. With 5 moderately sized men packed into an already heavy and low-sitting vehicle, undercarriage damage was nearly a guarantee. Given the fact that Jack had never driven up on this road before, It seemed weird that he was able to navigate it with such prowess near midnight. Furthermore, when the car was found, Jack's window was
This is all an ad for that car.
claimed was extremely uncharacteristic of him. Bearing in mind that Matthias and Madruga were the only two with driver's licenses, suspicion grew regarding the actual driver that night. Was Jack Madruga truly at the wheel, or did Matthias demand the keys while taking them up there?
Thanks to Resub Dingle.
Considering Matthias's numerous run-ins with the law, this wouldn't be entirely outside the realm of possibility. Prior to 1976, he was known to have been unpredictable, however straightened out after being prescribed schizophrenia medication. It was reported by his stepfather that, quote, he had no notable contact with police during the 2 years leading up to his disappearance, and he hadn't gone haywire in private during that time. The reason I bring this up is because I see it mentioned all the time on various articles and forums. However, the evidence presented, especially considering his own disappearance, is relatively insubstantial. While this is a notable possibility, in my opinion, there are others that carry a bit more weight.
I think it's paranormal. What if there was a magnetic anomaly causing an apparition to appear in front of the five,
Let's talk about
looking to be like a
Joseph's
mermaid or something, luring them out into the snow?
We can recall that he spent the better part of his Friday night stuck around the same area the boys were. It's staggering that he spent most of his night under the unluckiest of circumstances. However, I digress. In his testimony, he claimed that he witnessed something. A group consisting of a woman, a man, and a baby, all walking within the path of two sets of headlights. If we're assuming that his recollection is correct, then this leaves us questioning the identities of the other party involved. Ted Wyer's sister has come forth, theorizing on the potential that the men witnessed something nefarious that night, sometime after the basketball game. Perhaps they saw an attack or some sort of signal, whether domestic or not, and decided to follow the family to help.
What?
I'm not entirely sure how large the distance between Shones and the group he witnessed were, but hearing the cries of someone in need would surely spark some sort of desire to help instead of shutting up entirely. I find it strange that the headlights cut off and the conversations halted in both instances when he saw people. While the circumstances don't scream maliciousness, they definitely don't drive the situation towards innocence. That is, if his recollection was correct. You see, since this testimony came out, Shones' story had slightly changed each time he shared it. While this, of course, could be a simple case of memory distortion, the notion that he changed it at all ultimately weakens his story altogether. According to sources, conversing with Shones after the fact was admittedly frustrating. He would claim that he was very ill during the moments he believed he witnessed the others, and essentially admitted that he could have hallucinated
Thanks to
some of the
Resub Shamey
details.
and Chad Shipman.
Bearing in mind that the other parties stopped dead in their tracks both times he called out for them, it could have easily been a figment of his imagination. But what if it wasn't?
But what if it was?
That's just it. The nature of word-of-mouth testimonies, weakened by the circumstances of their situations, ultimately leave
Thanks
them
to
up for
Prime Camp.
debates and shrouded in uncertainty. While a nefarious situation is plausible, we can't discount the potential that the boys' predicament that night was all one big accident gone wrong.
One big accident gone wrong?
Let's put Gary Matthias.
Isn't
in
an
the spotlight
accident
once more.
already something going wrong?
Entertain this. The men are at the game. All's going well, and they leave that night without issue. They hit up Bears to grab some snacks before hitting the road back home. They're driving down Highway 99 towards Oroville, and somewhere on the way, Matthias convinced the others to visit his friend in nearby Forbstown. Jack agrees, and they detour right before Oroville onto the Oroville-Quincy Highway, where they eventually miss the turnoff onto Forbstown Road.
Similar style Squid, we watched
Quincy
DB Cooper.
Highway is incredibly dark at that time of night, so it would make sense. Hesitant to turn around since the highway tightly winds through the backcountry, the others suggested alternate turnoffs that were supposedly ahead. Alternate turnoffs that, as we know, they never took. Before they know it, they're up a mountain road, lost in the darkness before becoming stuck. Now, while they could have dislodged the car and turned around, we can't rule out the possibility that they simply didn't think to do so in their situation. On top of this, it was reported that a day prior to their dilemma, a snowplow had cleared a path along the road that they got stuck on, potentially instilling a sense of optimism that some external party would soon be back to help. A party that never came.
To be fair, I also wouldn't think to move the car.
Spot to get help.
I mean, maybe desperation, but it wouldn't be my first choice.
Since the service
but I certainly wouldn't get out of the car.
Miles away, it's safe to assume that surviving a trek of this magnitude against harsh weather is more or less a death sentence. As we know, the only ones that made it to the trailer were Matthias, Hewitt, and Wire. An undetermined amount of time later, Hewitt and Matthias would either leave to go get help for Wire or abandon his corpse and embark on yet another last-ditch effort to get themselves out of isolation.
Really, Onycax? Holy shit.
It's on their way out that both Hewitt and Matthias both succumb to the elements, drawing their predicament to its unfortunate end. If you ask me, I think Matthias pressed on northeast, trying to make his way towards the Meadow Valley area. What he likely didn't realize, however, was the fact that it was roughly 21 miles away. If he were with Wire, someone that shedded nearly half his body weight, then we can assume that Matthias mirrored this to some magnitude, leaving him weaker than when he initially arrived there. I believe Matthias died somewhere around the Meadow Valley region, and wildlife got to him before search teams could ever make it out there. But that is just my postulation. The case of the boys from Yuba County is, by all accounts,
hard to explain.
One that doesn't make sense, and details that support one theory ultimately weaken the other. It seems that we have the segments in front of us, and they're mostly put together
25 Shadow
without the whereabouts of Matthias ever materializing.
Appreciate it, man.
However, that's really all that we can do. Like, how was the car unscathed through rocky terrain? Why didn't they react to the cries of Joe Shones, someone they could have seen as their beacon for help? Why was the heat source and food that could have lasted them months untouched? It's cases like this that engulf me with fascination, even though there are still countless questions, countless loose ends, countless...
Damn, thank you for the 5k bits,
unknowns.
Chimbo. Thank you, man. Appreciate the generosity again.
The boys embarked on that brisk Friday night to what was supposed to be a night of sports, a night of laughter, and a night that they'd never forget. What transpired, in reality, were events that the world around them had been trying to piece together. Because it's all of us that can't forget them.
God damn. I will say, not as interesting as DB Cooper, but still interesting. This one seems more cut and dry to me. I think the most logical thing here is these 5 men had no fucking idea how to survive in like a scary situation, and they let fear take over every decision they made. So when they finally found shelter, maybe they stayed there for a few days, they thought it was hopeless, no one would ever find them, so they started moving, trying to get somewhere else where there were people, and I really think every decision just led to them not wanting to stay put because they started to feel hopeless. I don't think there's too much to unpack about that. Yeah, I know what that is, Kron. Alright, I'm gonna call it a night. A little bit of a had an early head start, but it looks like Cult 1. We'll do Cult, and it's shorter anyway, so this will be a good taste of the channel anyway.
It goes without saying,
Thanks to the Prime
cults are
Smooth.
infamous for a very good reason. They are known to indoctrinate people, manipulate them,
Mhm.
and use them as a collective for the goals of an individual cult leader or a harmful belief system. In many cases, they target individuals that are very
Thanks to the 5 gift subs,
vulnerable
Gaming
because they're
Legacy.
generally more
We
likely
sub
to
Nuke
look
and
for
Ghostly.
leadership. Desperate people tend to look for desperate answers and tend to not use their better judgment, Take, for instance, the story of the miracle mineral supplement that claimed to cure just about anything.
Hey, I remember that.
Autism. And as it would turn out, not only did it not cure any disease, did not help any disease, but also contained bleach. Cults thrive when followers of an individual collective prescribe themselves to blind misinformation.
Oh, here, hold on.
With all of that being said, today we're going to dive back into retracing the digital footsteps of one such cult. This is the story of the now defunct Reddit cult of Cantlemoism.
I've been on Reddit since day one, going from Dig to Reddit, and I've never heard of Cantlemoism.
Our topic first started when I was looking for more internet mysteries to do videos on, and I was on another popular subreddit called the Reddit Bureau of Investigation, and I found a post that read the following: super unusual subreddit where every post is gilded an absurd amount of times. Here is ISS Gold, the subreddit in question. I'm pretty positive they're all bots, but why circle jerk thousands of dollars into gilding onto these posts for no reason at all? There has to be some
they're a Reddit
why.
Gold
At the time
cult?
I had first checked out this subreddit,
cute.
It was still up, but as of now has been made private. In a nutshell, there were countless
Tier
posts
1
on this
elite.
tiny subreddit that contained a vast amount of Reddit gold and silver. At first, it appeared like some sort of test subreddit, something very similar to the YouTube channel WebDriver Torso. While I couldn't find any proof this was a test subreddit, what I did find out from a comment was what led me to this topic. A user had commented that this could have a possible connection to r/Cantlemoism, which dropped me right into one of the most interesting stories I've ever come across on Reddit. Trying to access
Sounds like some old Middle Earth shit.
You'll notice that the entire community has been banned. What's interesting here is that Reddit actually took notice of this community and banned it altogether. Keep in mind there's an r/Scientology subreddit that is wide open. So what was so bad about this one that Reddit had to take action? I will note the reason for this subreddit being banned is listed as for being unmoderated, but I highly doubt that, as you'll soon learn more details. If you trace this entire situation back, this all starts with a Reddit user by the name of Chris CGC, whose real name is Chris Cantlemo, who became notorious on Reddit for giving away upwards of $70,000 in Reddit badges, which was calculated by his own mods on his own subreddit. If you look into this guy's background, you'll learn that he owns a medical company called GL Sciences, as well as a few other companies in the past.
Very successful Redditor.
A bit of money. Just to make sure,
he must use r/finance.
Badges, they're used as gifts from one Reddit user to another and are displayed on posts. They are usually given out as a good job award for being particularly funny or helpful. Reddit Silver is the cheapest Reddit badge you can put on a post. The next tier is Reddit Gold, which gives you 1 week of Reddit Premium. Lastly, there is Reddit Platinum, which provides 1 month of Reddit Premium. If you're unfamiliar with Reddit Premium, essentially it is just a membership that unlocks a variety of features with Reddit, including the option to turn off ads. Moving back to Chris CGC, he became well known, as I said, for randomly gilding posts on the r/teenagers and r/dank memes subreddit. Keep in mind, this guy clearly targeted a younger demographic by going for those subreddits. For example, in this individual post, it would cost about $350, which features 69 platinum badges and
he's an epic memer, big man.
Who posted this? This was
imagine fucking CEO being a memer.
Would basically be handing out money every single
Okay, that's
day.
Elon Musk. Actually, never mind.
This was even so common that they created an entire subreddit called Children of Chris, dedicated to people who were gifted gold by him. At first glance, this seems entirely harmless. This guy was being generous with a lot of money and was reported to be spending thousands of dollars a day on gilded Reddit posts. As you can imagine, many people didn't have a problem with getting free Reddit Premium memberships, and it got to a point where people would just pass this guy's name around and say, "Message Chris, he'll send you gold." As I said, at first it seemed
surprised I've never heard of this.
It seemed like this guy simply had a bunch of money to go around and was willing to pull stunts for the sake of entertainment. But as time would go on, he would reveal the actual motive behind these gilding sprees. As a result of this guy gilding almost any post that was in his way, many people were curious about the man behind the gildings. A lot of people looked up to him because he was very generous. However, in an interview done by Insider Meme Trading after he gained some attention,
Insider Meme Trading,
mass gilding sprees, to which he responds saying he wanted to get the message
actually
out
cool name,
that
not gonna lie.
DMT cured cancer. In case you're unfamiliar, DMT is an incredibly powerful
holy shit.
DMT, or dimethyltryptamine, has been studied in the field of cancer. However, there is no consistent peer-reviewed evidence that would suggest this in any way. And let's be real here.
God, what is it?
If a cure for cancer was found, do you think a guy would have to do a publicity stunt?
Do they also use that for joint pain?
Dollars to get the word out in the months to come.
Give me 1 second. Hold on. Sorry to pause, but I need to look that up. DMT. They also use that for joint pain, don't they? Let me see. No, this isn't what I was thinking of. I remember a couple years back, I knew a guy that was peddling hard for some, like, really pseudoscience-y liquid jar-ish shit. Like, it looked like what the xenomorphs were born out of. And it was dimethyl something. I remember that, which is why it started to, like, fucking Winter Soldier me there for a minute. And he was like, this'll work, this'll cure your joint pain, inflammation, might make you taller, it's gonna make your beard more full. DXM? Maybe. Thanks for the hey, Socks. Good to see you, man. Thanks for the 5 gift subs, Socks and Lich. Jesus. Thank you for the generosity tonight. God damn.
He still found some notoriety and started
Sounds
to
like
gain a following
HGH.
as a result of his generosity.
No.
Something I want to note here, many of these followers were not in it for the sake of his teachings. However, they were a byproduct of being around him. Nonetheless, a portion of people stuck around and did listen to what this guy had to say. And there are former believers of Cantalmoism. And as time went on, and through the help of Cantalmoism Exposed, a subreddit we will get to, many people started to outline the potential symptoms of a forming cult. As I said earlier, looking back on this situation is
I highly doubt it's like a real cult.
All the original threads surrounding
probably just an updoots to the left. Thanks for the gold, stranger.
Deleted. Not to mention, Chris CGC himself was also banned from Reddit. In fact, Chris has been banned more than once. People collectively created a comprehensive list of alternate accounts that Chris was creating, and most of them are banned. What remains is a subreddit called Cantalmoism Exposed, in which we get a full understanding of the situation. The sidebar of this individual subreddit reads the following. Cantalmoism is a cult of personalities centered around Chris Cantalmo, who came to prominence on Reddit through his mass gilding sprees. The cult espouses a form of psychedelic New Age pseudoscience, ranging from innocuous beliefs to dangerous self-harm.
Oh, okay.
Members of r/teenagers for recruitment. We are here to aggregate information about Cantalmoism and help people make informed decisions to avoid further recruitment. Among the pinned threads in the subreddit, we find one called Outline of Initial Concerns with Cantalmoism. Here we learn quite a bit about this whole fiasco. The thread reads the following. I'm interested in whether or not any true cults have ever emerged on Reddit. I've been following Chris CGC and his sub Cantalmoism. I started out participating for the awards. I had 5 years of premium after a few days of participation, but once I had more than enough gold, I continued to participate out of interest for what is the strangest, most cult-like sub I've ever seen. Today, it is starting to get more renewed interest by the Reddit community. As a leader, Chris CGC has been suspended by Reddit for 3 days, and it was mentioned in a popular and just deleted Ask Reddit thread described as a really weird cult-like subreddit run by a guy who gilds literally all the posters. He talks about how he has terminal brain cancer and that he's cured it with DMT, and believes DMT can cure literally everything, and the users seem to agree for some reason. My personal take is that he's a schizophrenic, but I have no proof.
Or just a scam artist, what do you mean?
Here's a few ways in which it seems like a cult. Mind-altering practices such as meditation, chanting, speaking in tongues,
Pablo in Tier 1
sessions, and debilitating work routines are used in excess. Perhaps the main tenet of the whole cult is that DMT is a perfect and godly substance with no bad effects that everybody should be using, and that it cures cancer and AIDS. In fact, he has gone as far as saying that radiation and chemotherapy are torture and make patients worse, not better, which is extremely dangerous advice to people who have cancer. He has also urged his followers
did Chris talk to Steve Jobs or something?
Every day,
is he responsible for that?
Tricked into fearing the sun to make us dumber. The leadership induces feelings of shame and or guilt in order to influence and or control members. Often this is done through peer pressure and subtle forms of persuasion. This is a textbook and egregious example, especially when it turned out that the user YanZZ didn't actually do anything wrong and the cult members refused to accept it. The group is elitist, claiming a special exalted status for itself. Its leaders and members, for example, the leader is considered the Messiah, a special being, an avatar.
No fucking way. All because he was gifting Reddit gold? That's like just spitting in your face and then wiping it off. Reddit gold is useless.
The leader, Chris CGC,
truly useless.
Is constantly referred to as God. He believes that he has special knowledge.
Hold on, I need to look at it. What does Reddit gold do? Doesn't it just grant you access to the Reddit gold lounge? Like, who cares? So you hang out with some pretentious douchebags? Like, does it do anything else? Let's see. What is Reddit gold? Rewards awarded the post. What can you do with it? Here we go. So you get a week of Reddit Premium and 100 coins you can use to give someone silver. Is there ads on Reddit? I can't say I've perused the internet without an ad block in years. Is that like a big draw? Like you don't get ads? For a week? Oh, okay. It seems like an awfully large thing to say that the guy who gives you Reddit gold is the Messiah. Jesus. Thanks to the Prime Poison. Thanks to the Resubble Kami.
Of the spirit world and wants to use the knowledge for the express goal of world peace. The group is also preoccupied with bringing in new members. Monetary rewards are gifted with participating in the sub. The group is preoccupied with money. He spends thousands of dollars a day gilding members with Reddit money, and he also is increasingly paying members real money and offering to pay for their plane rides to
That's a great deal. Wait, he's just giving away money?
He spent over $100,000 recruiting followers with a main focus on
just fucking pretend to call him the Messiah. Who cares? Free cash from a weirdo.
Outrageous things he has said, but I think that thankfully most of these are not taken completely seriously by his followers. His most devoted followers definitely still believe him, though. It seems like Reddit is starting to catch on and get worried, as his account was just suspended for 3 days for telling people to call me or visit me to experience DMT as anti-cancer treatment. He encourages schizophrenia and believes that it's caused by excess DMT and that hallucinations are completely real. As the poster of this thread starts to update it, he goes into one of the podcast episodes that have now been deleted. Edit 3. I just listened to Chris' most recent podcast episode, and I can finally understand what people see in him as a leader and why his followers seem to love him. I'm almost convinced that he's an amazing and insane human being. Either that makes him less threatening because he's not the type of person to start a dangerous cult, or more threatening because he is the type of person that could convince enough people to pull it off. The first half is just a normal conversation, which establishes trust in him before he transitioned to the crazier second half. We learn how Chris befriends the homeless and lets them come into his house whenever they want to.
That's kind of nice, though.
He wishes he had enough space to let thousands of them sleep in his backyard.
What?
He does have over an acre.
Maybe this guy is the Messiah.
Enough to start a commune/cult on a smaller scale. Then, in the second half, he starts talking about DMT, albeit in a far less insane way.
That monkey in the Prime King Joe.
He then makes some apocalyptic prophecies that he previously talked about on Reddit. He talks about things such as a recession worse than the Great Depression being imminent, and World War III between US, Iran, and Israel being imminent as well. However, he does say that those two things will actually be good for everyone except the rich. Next, he tells us what his ideal society looks like. He wants something beyond communism, where money is made illegal. It's not too big of a stretch to say that he might consider implementing such a society on a smaller scale.
Money
if
is
he gains
illegal.
Enough devoted followers. Lastly, he talks about suicide. At first, he said he thinks the people who commit suicide go to a better place.
Oh, wow.
And are better off.
Holy shit.
This is obviously a very scary idea when you look at how common mass
suicide
is in cults. He seems to be aware of this as he quickly changes his tune to say that he really thinks that people who commit suicide have to start their life all over again, which would be boring. Overall, there are some Jonestown vibes, but mostly he just seems like an extremely moral, charitable, and crazy person. His followers fall in love with him for his morality and charity,
pop up for me, Kaiser.
missing
Well, thank
out
you
on the
then if you
crazy
did, man.
side, and that's where I think the danger lies. Alright, now, as I said previously, many of the links are dead. However, going over to his website, we can in fact see many of the claims and the beliefs held by this guy, and they still stand in the discovery section of the website. While it might be insane to think that many people even remotely entertain this guy, he made examples out of a few of his devoted followers.
Jonestown is one of the most wild stories,
yeah. Up to $15,000. As a result, many people sucked up to him in hopes of financial gain. But at the time, Reddit turned a blind eye as they were getting paid through the nose by this guy. I personally believe, as well as many other people, that most of his so-called followers were just in it for the sake of money.
Crazy in the
and when there stopped being handouts on a daily basis, almost all of his followers started to turn on him for not providing evidence of his claims. At first, some people were willing to be patient since Chris had never provided any proof towards his claims regarding DMT. He came from a scientific background and would constantly post about his upcoming research being published. However, that obviously...
Wait, is this Chris? This guy doesn't look like a dank memer at all. Looks like Tom Hanks in character. I thought it was going to be a young guy. Cult leader my ass. Grandpa.
At another point
Ew.
in time, one of Cantlemoism's main
Give me back
followers
that
got a
Reddit
restraining order
gold.
from Chris, which led to him getting doxxed. This led to death threats for leaving the group, and ultimately this situation was starting to spiral. Later on, death threats would flood into basically anyone critiquing the group. However, many people noticed that in many cases, it was just Chris on an alternate account. In an effort to keep some of his followers on the hook without any financial incentives, Chris became desperate and would make alt accounts pretending to be news outlets, stating that they were working on a story about his research. However, obviously people saw right through this. Up to this point, even the most devoted followers started to not be able to turn a blind eye towards his childish behavior. In many situations, he resorted to name-calling like a 5-year-old, and in other cases, he even told a person with cancer that he was an idiot. As a result, his own subreddit turned against him. It read the following: "This is a place for a very mentally ill man named Chris Cantlemo to post his craziness. Please get this man help and don't support him. He has no money left, no family left, and nothing good in his life."
Damn, Chris, fucking blasted
So
on your own dank
to
meme.
today, where around a month ago, this Reddit community as a whole has been banned. I can only imagine because Reddit wasn't getting paid off nearly as much. While Chris still remains online on his other platforms, he's still trying to recruit members in person, but his digital footprint still remains.
I want to check out
Even
that
his
channel.
own Discord turned against him, and one of his top followers has now taken over. From an outsider like myself, looking at this entire situation, in my opinion, I definitely see how this seems quite premeditated. I can see the angle a lot of people have mentioned regarding this guy being mentally ill as well. However, it seems like from the very beginning, this was calculated towards creating a cult. This guy comes from an educated background. He graduated from Yale. He set up a website. He targeted impressionable people, and he used one little sliver of attention and was vindictive towards anyone who didn't agree with his beliefs. Thankfully, however, the situation.
Hey, thanks for the 10 new subs again, Cyaxis. Good to see you tonight.
Something else I should note is that I also believe, to
generosity.
a certain extent, Chris has been experiencing a degree of psychosis.
Uh-oh.
I don't believe this guy to be mentally stable due to the constant drug use. Here we had a guy with a great livelihood and a good life, and he was well off. Then, seemingly out of nowhere in the later years of his life, after being an atheist for 56 years, he becomes ultra-spiritual as a result of taking DMT. And
He just wanted to start a cult, man. He just did it the wrong way.
As a god, and all of his teachings
He should have
point
started
to
playing
obvious
Minecraft.
delusions and psychosis. That being said, I don't think talking shit directly to this guy helps whatsoever. As a result, anyone watching this video, don't go harass this guy. His brain obviously processes information differently, and even though what he attempted to do was terrible, it won't stop him from continuing
appreciate it,
doing what he's
Cyaxis.
doing.
Thank you for the
This guy
generosity
needs professional help. Instead, this video stands as something much more effective
Makes
for
a
the
good sub Kaiser.
situation than directly talking shit to him. At this point, if anyone comes across this rabbit hole or topic on the internet, they have a reference point to which they can understand how this group came to being and avoid it. With that being said, I thank you for joining me here today as we looked at
Well, that was
one of the
actually kind of
weirdest stories I've
interesting.
ever seen on Reddit. This is Barely Sociable. Have a great night.
Is that true? Only one guy said this, but now I have to know. Did Chris Cantlemo actually kill himself because this video? I'm gonna look it up. I feel like I'm being lied to, but that would be horrible. Let's see. Oh my god. Wait, that's real. That's fucking awful. Jesus Christ. Yeah, that guy wasn't lying. Wow. Well, that was a ride. Holy shit. But
Just let me know.
fuck it. We'll go in.
Near the end of the 16th century,
Thanks, the Prime Pony.
a man by the name of John White embarked on a transatlantic voyage. His destination was the island of Roanoke along the southeastern coast of North America. On this island, White had established an English colony some 3 years before, and he was now returning to resume his position as governor. After a long and difficult journey, White finally reached the site of the colony, only to find the more than
Prime
100
pyro.
men, women and children he'd left behind had disappeared. A secret message carved into a tree was one of the only clues left behind at the scene. Before White had a chance to conduct a more extensive search, the ship returned to England, and in its wake, it left a mystery. What happened to the lost colony of Roanoke?
I think I know the conclusion, so I'm just gonna say it. I don't remember if this is right since it's been so long, and I actually haven't watched this video.
Before
I was
we
wrong.
can tackle the lost
If I
colony,
remember
we
correctly,
first
they
need to
just
understand
left.
the events leading up to its disappearance.
They literally just left.
The story begins in 1584 when two ships sailed across the Atlantic to scout for a suitable location for the planting of the first permanent English colony.
Makes a tier 1 bunch of eggs in the tier 1
In
mayo.
mid-July, they made landfall
prime
on a
dunt
string of
and
barrier islands
enjoyable
known as the
cactus.
Outer Banks. The English quickly developed friendly relations with the local Native Americans and were soon invited to their village on Roanoke Island. After about a month, the scouting expedition returned to their ships and sailed back to England. Upon the expedition's return in late September, the man in charge of the enterprise, Walter Raleigh, immediately began preparations to plant a permanent colony somewhere along the Outer Banks. Raleigh was soon thereafter knighted by Queen Elizabeth I, and the new land was to be named Virginia in honor of the Virgin Queen. In April of 1585, a fleet of 7 ships departed England with a complement of roughly 600 men and loaded with enough provisions to sustain the colony for about a year. The fleet reached the Outer Banks at the end of June, but was soon faced with crisis.
I know nothing about it.
Navigating the waters of the Outer Banks can be notoriously treacherous, as indicated by these sinking ships. And when the flagship passed through one of the shallow inlets, it struck a shoal and was nearly destroyed. As the flagship carried the bulk of the provisions and most of it was now spoiled by seawater, the scope of the colony had to be dramatically reduced. About 100 men, far fewer than initially intended, were stationed on Roanoke Island, and with the natives' approval, they began construction of what was to become the Roanoke colony. The island was primarily chosen for its strategic value. It provided quick access to the ocean while still making the colony invisible to Spanish patrols. You see, Spain had already colonized and laid claim to much of what the English now called Virginia, so they had to be careful.
Old war shit is so fucking cool to me.
A second wave of supplies and reinforcements was expected
Hey,
to
Abrasive,
arrive
thank you for the
before
20 gift subs
winter,
again,
but
Abrasive.
unbeknownst to the colonists,
Thank
the
you, Abrasive. I
resupply
hope you've
mission
been
had been
well.
countermanded by the Queen to deal with more pressing concerns back in England. As such, once the colonists ran out of food, they had to rely on the generosity of the natives.
Appreciate the fat drop
However,
as always.
the natives
Thank you,
only
Abrasive.
had so much to spare and struggled to meet increasing demands by the colonists. This overdependence quickly began to strain their relationship. Meanwhile, people had begun to notice a disturbing trend. Every time the English visited a Native American village, many of its inhabitants would inexplicably collapse and die. The natives believed the English could kill from a distance by shooting invisible bullets, and they were not too far off. While unknown at the time, the English were carrying deadly pathogens to which the natives lacked immunity, and thus an epidemic was unwittingly unleashed upon the indigenous population. The two leaders back on Roanoke, Colonial Governor Rolfe Lane and Indian Chieftain Wingina, eventually grew so suspicious of one another that cohabitation was no longer possible. Wingina decided to remove his people from the island and retreated to a larger village on the mainland. Meanwhile, Lane came to believe that Wingina had formed an alliance with other tribes and that they were plotting to launch an attack against the colony. Whether he was paranoid or not, Lane decided to take preemptive action. On the 1st of June 1586, Lane and his men made their way to the mainland village.
No, I'm pretty sure it has a
and
real
massacred
explanation. I
its
think they
people.
just moved. They
One of
literally
the Englishmen
left.
chased after and decapitated Wingina, and his head was later impaled outside a fort
Holy
of
shit.
the colony. A week later, a large English fleet commanded by the renowned sea captain Sir Francis Drake dropped by the Outer Banks on its way back to England. Given the lack of food and violent clashes with the natives, it was decided to abandon the colony. The colonists were hastily evacuated
I'll have
off
to
the
check that out
island,
in
and then after 9 long months, they all returned home. All except 3, who were not located in time for the evacuation, and so the fleet left them behind. They were never heard from again. If the scouting expedition of 1584 had been a resounding success, the colony of 1585 was a categorical failure. Relations with the Native Americans had completely fallen apart, the severe lack of food had made life miserable, and they had failed to track down rumored sources of gold and copper which could have made the venture worthwhile. In spite of all this, at least one man
But at least
was
they found
eager to
friends.
return. His name was John White. White was a painter and artist
Thanks for
by
some
trade,
Tiger
many
and
of the maps and
Chacrosis and the
sketches
Prime
that we've seen
Pseudo.
so far were either drawn by him or based on his work. Somewhat ironically, however, there are no surviving portraits of White himself. White's participation in these earlier voyages is slightly ambiguous.
I'll check
he
it out,
may
Pepin.
have been part of the scouting expedition in 1584, but he was definitely part of the voyage in 85. What is a bit unclear is whether he stayed behind at the colony or returned to England with the outbound fleet. For instance, White's name is not included in a surviving list of all the colonists. But some historians believe this is merely an oversight and that he was in fact part of the colony. In either case, Sir Walter Raleigh was eventually persuaded by White and others to attempt a second venture. Unlike the first colony, which had been more
What if
akin to a
Roanoke grew
military
so
outpost,
advanced that they
the
actually were
second
able
would
to
include
build
women
teleportation and
children,
teleport it
including
out?
White's pregnant daughter,
Is that a potential
Eleanor
theory?
Dare. After a long struggle to secure the necessary funding, a fleet of 3 ships commanded by White, who would also serve as the governor of the colony, departed England in late spring of 1587.
Thanks to the gift sub Kingo So and the resub Senpai. Thanks for a long time of watching.
The misfortune of the first colony did not end with its evacuation in 1586. Only days later, a ship filled with provisions sent by Sir Walter Raleigh arrived at the Outer Banks. The crew spent some time
Must have
searching
been
for
such
the
a
colonists,
fucking
but when they found no sign of them,
scary
including
adventure
the 3
going from
men that
place
had
to
been left
place
behind,
on the
they
sea like
returned
that.
home. The same thing happened 2 weeks later when an English-bound fleet loaded with supplies and reinforcements also found the colony deserted. Unwilling to leave the colony vacant, however, the captain left 15 crewmen on Roanoke before the fleet resumed course for England. John White had been told about the 15 crewmen before he departed, so when his fleet approached the Outer Banks in late July of 1587, he intended to pay them a visit. But this is where things get confusing. You see, the second colony was never intended to be established on Roanoke. After all, the long list of complications encountered by the first colony made it clear that Roanoke was far from an ideal location. Instead, the second colony, or the city of Raleigh as the man in charge had so immodestly named it, was to be planted somewhere along the coast of Chesapeake Bay. This made a lot more sense. The water was deeper to allow for larger ships, and not nearly as precarious as those around the Outer Banks. There was plenty of open space, the soil was more fertile, and all around it seemed an improvement to Roanoke Island. But the fleet's Portuguese navigator, Simão Fernandes, had other plans. Fernandes had also been the navigator of the 2 previous expeditions and was a far more experienced sailor than White.
How does this
So
all
even
tie
though
into
White
Roanoke,
was
though?
officially
I'm
the
a little
captain,
confused.
it seems much of the crew respected the authority of Fernandes. As such, when Fernandes decided to ignore the plan about Chesapeake Bay and instead simply dump the colonists on Roanoke, White did nothing to challenge his decision. The rest of the crew quickly fell in line, and soon enough everyone disembarked for Roanoke. Upon reaching the abandoned colony, there was no sign of the 15 crewmen they had come to assist. Instead, they found a pile of bones that appeared to be the remains of one of them.
Nice, they ate
White
them.
suspected the men had been attacked by vengeful Indians, and any doubts he might have had were soon to be erased. After only a few days on the island, a colonist by the name of George Howe was attacked by a group of natives who pelted him with 16 arrows before caving in his skull with a wooden club.
Wow.
A brutal yet unmistakable message. The English were no longer welcome on Roanoke. Even so, the colonists were not without allies. You see, when the scouting expedition returned to England in 1584, 2 Native Americans named Wanchese and Manteo were brought along with them. Wanchese was from Roanoke, while Manteo was from a neighboring village on the island of Croatoan. When they were finally brought back to North America in 1585, they had developed vastly different opinions of the English people. As soon as they made landfall, Wanchese returned to Roanoke with nothing but resentment for these foreign invaders. Meanwhile, Manteo was fascinated by everything the English had to offer. He became their trusted guide and a mediator of sorts to
they had like
smooth out
technology and
relations
shit,
upon
right?
first contact. So, following the death of George Howe, White reached out to the Croatoans, and they confirmed what he'd initially suspected. A large group of Indian tribes had indeed attacked the 15 crewmen stationed on Roanoke. This coalition was spearheaded by none other than one chief. At least
that
2
bastard!
of the crewmen had been killed in the attack, while the rest escaped in a small boat, never to be seen again. Roanoke had become a much more dangerous place to live. Simão Fernandes remained anchored near the Outer Banks for about a month before he decided to return to England. In the meantime, the colonists had grown concerned about the long-term survival of the colony. If the colony were to be truly self-sufficient, they argued, they would require more people and more food.
And a nuclear reactor.
They implored Governor White to return to England with Fernandes so that he could bring back supplies and restock the colony. White was initially hesitant to leave as he feared he'd be accused of desertion if he returned to England alone. Not to mention he would have to abandon his daughter, who had recently given birth to a daughter of her own, named Virginia, on this remote and precarious island. But in time, he was persuaded to go, and as the fleet departed in late August of 1587, he could not have known he would never see any of them again.
Oh no. The Kraken got him, huh? We live in such a fucking boring world.
After a long and difficult voyage,
I wish it was something like a fucking Elder God Cthulhu was the one like behind all of it.
No ships were to leave England until the threat of a Spanish invasion had passed. This was bad news for White, and his best efforts notwithstanding, he remained trapped in England for 3 long years. It was not until the spring of 1590, with the help of Sir Walter Raleigh, that White finally managed to book passage on a convoy bound for America. Upon reaching the Outer Banks,
I haven't seen that, but that sounds scary, sleepy.
Plumes of smoke appeared to emanate from Roanoke Island. 2 boats were quickly dispatched, and the crew fired the ship's cannons to make their presence known. The men could see a great fire as they approached the island, but White never clarifies whether it was natural
Where's the
or
5 gift subs,
by
Dustin?
people. Once ashore, they made their way to the west end of the island
Appreciate
and
it,
found a set
Dustin.
of footprints. They appear to be fresh,
Don't know what that means, but
there
thanks,
was
Omni.
no sign of those to whom they belonged. The search party then headed north and happened upon a tree where someone had carved the letters C-R-O. Upon reaching the entrance of the colony, they came across a second inscription. It was the word Croatoan engraved into a wooden post. The post was but one of many that now formed a defensive barrier around the colony. The colony itself was deserted, and clearly had been for some time, given the overgrowth of grass and weeds. The houses had been taken down and stripped of valuables. All they found were bars of iron, a few cannons, as well as 5
Iron's valuable.
chests. There
Thanks
was
for
no
5 gift
trace
subs,
of
handy
the roughly
dandy.
115 colonists,
Appreciate the
nor
generosity,
the small
thank you.
boats left in their possession. As far as anyone could tell, no one had lived here for quite some time. The story of the lost colony is often centered around the 2 engravings, and without the full context, it's easy to see how an author might imbue these inscriptions with intrigue and mystery. In truth, the carvings are some of the more well-understood elements of the entire story.
Elgato and the
At
tier
least
1
John
Sleepy.
White had no doubts about their meaning. White explains in his notes
you,
that
Gato.
before he left in 1587, he and the colonists had come to an agreement. If they decided to abandon the colony before the governor's return, they were to leave behind a secret token of their destination. Furthermore, if this abandonment was forced upon them, they were to include a cross to signify distress. Because no such cross had been found, White was confident the colonists had safely relocated to the island of Croatoan.
I fucking
Thus,
told you,
White
yeah.
swiftly returned to the ship and convinced the captain to set course for Croatoan. But while the crew prepared for departure, the anchor cable snapped, and without the spare anchor, the captain felt it was too dangerous to continue. In the end, White never made it to Croatoan, and it was the last time he ever ventured across the Atlantic.
Yeah, they literally just fucking left. Oh yeah, this place sucks, I'm out.
While an unsatisfying conclusion, it seems relatively safe to assume the lost colony of Roanoke simply relocated to the island of Croatoan. Case closed?
Not sure, Dead Alarm. There's a lot of cool history.
Not quite. You see, while explaining the meaning of the inscriptions, White revealed another interesting yet puzzling detail. With a single sentence, White explains that before he left in 1587, the colonists were preparing to move 50 miles into the mainland. While Croatoan is about 50 miles south of Roanoke, it's also an island, distinctly not part of the mainland. As such, this lone sentence introduces, if but a modicum of doubt, to White's version of events.
Like the prime thief and
Perhaps
resub heretic.
Croatoan was not their intended destination after all. If so, where could they have gone? 20 years after the Roanoke colony was lost, the Anglo-Spanish War had come to an end.
Prime Sealy.
John White faded into obscurity, and Sir Walter Raleigh had been found guilty of treason for conspiring against the crown. Yeah, I know, it's a whole other thing. Anyway, renewed interest in America saw the plantation of a third colony in 1607. The Jamestown colony was established within the borders of a vast confederacy of Native American tribes ruled by a man the English called Powhatan. One day, Powhatan captured the future governor of the colony, John Smith, and told him about the place where men wearing European clothing lived. Then, after his release in 1608, Smith drew a rough map of Virginia, and this is one of the notations. Unfortunately, this claim, and others just like it, were never properly investigated, so we can never know if this was anything more than a rumor. Another unconfirmed report was that all but a few of the colonists had been massacred by Powhatan.
5K
the survivors
bits, Rob.
of this slaughter at Roanoke had
Well,
supposedly scattered across the region. The problem is, White did not report any human remains or signs of a battle when he returned to Roanoke in 1590. Even so, an acquaintance of John Smith later wrote that Powhatan had confessed to the massacre after Smith was captured. Smith himself, however, makes no mention of this alleged confession, and he was not exactly known to shy away from embellishment. Pocahontas. Other reports included sightings of Native American children with unusually pale skin and blonde hair, which led many to suspect they could be the descendants of the lost colonists. What they had no way of knowing at the time, however, was that albinism is far more prevalent among Native Americans than Europeans. A more solid lead emerged a full century later when the English explorer John Lawson made contact with a tribe known as the Hatteras. The Hatteras occupied the same land as the Croatoans, but the island was now much larger and known as Hatteras Island after a storm had closed one of the inlets. The Hatteras explained to Lawson that some of their ancestors had been white and able to read. Several members of the tribe also had grey eyes, a unique trait of the Hatteras according to Lawson. They also spoke of a local legend about a ghost ship, which they referred to as Sir Walter Raleigh's ship.
Whoa!
Hearing all this, Lawson grew convinced the Hatteras was in fact the descendants of the lost colony. Much like John White, Lawson believed the colony had been relocated to Croatoan, and over time the two peoples had become one. Okay, so we now have two sources over a century apart arguing for the same version of events. John White says they went to Croatoan because carvings, John Lawson says they went to Croatoan because grey eyes and ghosts. Not the most decisive evidence perhaps, but it does make for a compelling argument. Following Lawson's encounter with the Hatteras in 1701, nothing of significance would be uncovered for centuries. That is until the late 1930s when a series of peculiar stones suddenly brought the mystery back to life.
Whoa,
the stones had been inscribed with messages supposedly written by Eleanor Dare, the daughter of John White. Unfortunately, they all turned out to be fake.
Oh,
well,
cool.
All except the first stone, whose authenticity remains in doubt. This stone features a message from Dare addressed to White in which she describes the tragic death of her husband and child. The composition of the stone makes it well suited for inscribing a message, but a poor choice for a forger, as they would have had to chemically age the fresh markings to match the weathered surface. It would not have been impossible, but quite difficult to do so in the 1930s.
Why would they bother forging that shit in the first place?
The stone was never heard from again, and the precise location of its discovery was conveniently kept secret. The credibility of the writing is equally contested, and there's just no consensus on what to make of it. Modern archaeological research has also been plagued by uncertainties. Excavations at Roanoke have mostly confirmed the presence of a 16th century English colony, but have done little in the way of determining its fate. Meanwhile, excavations on Hatteras has yielded a mix of Native American and European artifacts, including the hilt of a light sword, but nothing that can be definitively linked to the lost colony. To make matters worse, much of the evidence may now be underwater due to centuries of shifting sands and erosion of the islands.
Damn, time is fucking crazy.
It was partially out of frustration for this lack of progress that researchers made a remarkable discovery in late 2011. While inspecting,
turns out the colonists are still alive.
A member of the first colony
they discovered immortality.
Took note of these patches. Historically, patches like these have been used to correct minor mistakes, so no one had ever given them a second thought. This time, someone did and had the patches carefully examined. Underneath the lower patch, they found exactly what you'd expect: minor corrections. Underneath the upper patch, however, they found this.
Siemens.
This four-pointed star is a typical representation of a fort. A comparable symbol can be seen on this map from the early 17th century. The paint used to draw the symbol matches the paint used elsewhere on the map, including the corrections drawn on top of the lower patch, suggesting it was drawn and concealed by White himself.
Whoa.
More puzzling still, a slightly smaller four-pointed star enclosed by two concentric squares has been painted with invisible ink on top of the patch. This symbol can even be faintly discerned with the naked eye, meaning it's been hiding in plain sight all along. Finally, this fort is situated on the mainland.
But what does it all
50
mean?
miles west of Roanoke.
Are the colonists among us now? Jesus Christ.
The location of the concealed fort was quickly named Site X in reference to the expression X marks the spot.
Nice.
While the fort itself has
cool.
yet to be found, presuming it was ever built, archaeological digs have uncovered a few items of interest. Fragments of pottery
I know his
and
channel
bits of
very well,
metal
Kingo-so.
are indicative of an English presence, but much like the findings on Hatteras, an indisputable link to the lost colony has yet to be established.
God damn, thank you again, Rob.
That being said, the research is still ongoing, and the smoking gun, whatever it may be, will perhaps have been found by the time you're watching this. Presuming this is the intended location for the city of Raleigh, one has to wonder, why was it concealed with a patch? Tempting as it may be to envision some elaborate conspiracy, there is a very simple explanation. Remember how in 1608, John Smith sent his rough map of Virginia
How could I forget 1608?
Well, this is not the original map, but an illicit copy. A copy made in secret by the Spanish ambassador and covertly passed along to the King of Spain. So England had good reason to worry about sensitive information, such as the location of a fort, being intercepted by enemy spies. Another example is how the colony on Roanoke was concealed through omission. We still don't know the precise location or layout of the colony because it was never indicated on any of the surviving maps. While it continues
What do you mean? I was looking right at it.
among historians and archaeologists, this secrecy did serve a purpose as it prevented Spain from ever finding the colony. In fact, Spain continued to search for the colony long after it was lost, so it's unlikely they had anything to do with
potato
its
and prime
disappearance.
vengeful.
On the other hand, if the fort was never built,
Good point,
the patch
Omni.
may be precisely what it was always assumed to be, nothing more than a correction. Then again, the near invisible symbol drawn on top of the patch strongly imply concealment as opposed to a simple revision. After going through all the available evidence, this is what I'm thinking. So John White left Roanoke in 1587.
Right.
When he failed to return, the colony was split into two groups. One decamped for Site X, while the other went to live with the friendly Croatoans to await the governor's return.
Oh,
the region is
interesting.
known to have suffered a severe drought just after White left, so the relocation may not only have been motivated by diminishing supplies and hostilities, but also
Maybe
by a
another
lack
night,
of
comrade.
water and crop production.
It's
As
getting late,
years
no more
turn
rabbit
into
holes.
decades, the colonists may have
I'm already
started
deep in
families
one.
with, and thus become inseparable from, the indigenous people amongst whom they lived. Not only would this explain the disappearance, but also the Croatoan inscription, the 50 miles into the main, as well as the grey eyes of the Hattress. While I'm still leaning towards it being fake, I do find it interesting how the Dare stone was supposedly discovered just a few miles north of Site X. After all, if you're a hoaxer and you want to convince 1930s America that this stone is genuine, why claim you found it so far away from Roanoke? One should also keep in mind that much of the evidence relies solely on the words and paintings of one man. Parts of White's account could easily be a misinterpretation or exaggeration, so depending on what evidence you regard as credible, other solutions are equally plausible. For instance, some believe the colony went ahead with the original plan and relocated somewhere along the coast of Chesapeake Bay. Others believe they were all lost at sea after a failed attempt to return to England. But these solutions are about as helpful as saying the colony vanished into thin air. Without a more localized place of interest to search for corroborating evidence, there is virtually no hope of resolution. So, with all that being said, many questions remain. What happened to the 3 forsaken colonists and the 13 crewmen? Why did Simão Fernandes disobey orders and dump the colonists on Roanoke? Why was one of the 2 engravings left incomplete? Why was everyone named John? As for the most important question of them all, well, if there is an answer to that question, chances are it lies buried somewhere at Site X, just waiting to be found.
Damn. I think his theory makes the most sense. They split into groups and they both went to 2 different places. I think that is the most likely, but I like to imagine there's a more paranormal element at play. I think what also could have happened is perhaps a dimensional rift had occurred at some point, maybe due to an intense weather anomaly. And through that rift entered one of the Lovecraftian villains we just recently learned about, and that is what happened. These are prime weathers, and I can't be proven wrong yet, but I eventually will, I think.